is approved, then senators can either amend, alter the calendar as they wish. And just some things to note during this new session. All the motions that were tabled in the House during the last session, they automatically expired at the close of the session that it closed on December last year. And then all the statements that were not read in the House, they all expired during that time. The only statement that will be considered by the House and the committees are the questions that were and statements that were in a way processed by the House and then read on the House and committed to several committees of the House. You can see the senators have streamed into the chamber, and we're determining whether there is a quorum for the House to commence its sittings for today. And in the chamber, there is Senator Christo Asige, nominated senator. The quorum bell is still being rung, meaning that we don't have the quorum yet for transaction of the business for today. And among the bills that have been listed in the order paper for today, you can see quorum has been achieved. We hand you over to the plenary. Thank you.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Honorable Senators, I hereby report that a petition has been submitted to the Senate by Mr. Isaiah Odur Ochanda, who is a former employee of the Department of Defense, DOD, presently known as the Minister of Defense. As you're aware, Article 1191 of the Constitution provides that, and I quote, every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation. Now, Honorable Senators, the salient issues raised in this petition are as follows. A, that in 1987, the petitioner sustained spinal cord injuries while in the course of his duties, which left him paraplegic. That in 1995, the petitioner was served with a discharge instruction letter on medical grounds that was to take effect from 13th of April 1995. That despite the petitioner completing all the necessary clearance documents, he was not paid his lawful dues. That the petitioner filed a case in the High Court of Kenya, civil case number 1051 of 1996, and a judgment was made on the 2nd of March 2011, that the petitioner be paid his dues and compensated accordingly. That the Minister of Defense and the Office of the Attorney General did not obey the court order despite the petitioner making several follow-ups and appeals through various offices, including the Commission of Administrative Justice, CAJ, and the Kenya National Commission for Human Rights. That the petitioner further went for a judicial review, that is JR 148 of 2013, and a ruling was delivered on the 14th of July 2023, compelling the Minister of Defense and the Office of the Attorney General to satisfy the decree in High Court Civil Case number 1051 of 1996 to the petitioner, and to which also they did not take action. That after failure to comply with the judicial review orders of mandamus, the court issued a warrant of arrest, which up to date has not been effected. The petitioner therefore prayed that the Senate intervenes in this matter to have him paid the decretal amount awarded by the court and his disability pension outstanding from 1996 to date. Now, I'm aware, Honorable Senators, that pursuant to Standing Order 237, I may allow intervention of this petition for a period not more than 30 minutes. But looking at the business ahead of us, I beseech honorable senators that we do not proceed with any intervention on this particular petition, and therefore allow me to commit the same pursuant to Standing Order 238-1, allow me to commit this particular petition to the relevant committee for consideration. And in this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations. And in terms of Order 238-2, Standing Order 238-2, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading this prayer, which is today, to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. Next order, clerk.
Order number 5, papers.
The Senate Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, the 14th day of February 2024. The draft Senate calendar for the third session of the 13th Parliament. Thank you. I beg to lay.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
The Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I give notice of the following motion that pursuant to Standing Order 32-1, the Senate approves the calendar regular sessions for the third session of the 13th Parliament, February 10th, December 2024, laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 14th February 2024. Thank you.
Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Next order.
Order number 8, the Conflict of Interest Bill, National Assembly Bills number 12 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the management and regulation of conflict of interest and for connected purposes.
Next order.
Order number 9, the Gambling Control Bill, National Assembly Bills number 70 of 2023, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the regulation of betting, casinos and other forms of gambling, authorization of prize competitions and public lotteries, for the establishment of the Gambling Regulatory Authority of Kenya, for imposition of tax on betting and other forms of gambling, and for connected purposes.
Honorable Senator Crystal Asige, you've been here long enough. And you know, when you rise on a point of order, it is when a colleague has the floor. Are you saying the clerk is out of order? Is it on a point of order or it's an intervention you'd wish to? Because if it's a point of order, I'm afraid I may not allow you. Proceed, Senator.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 37, that the Senate do adjourn to discuss an urgent matter of national importance, namely the increased killings of women and girls recently witnessed in the country. I thank you. I forgot to continue standing. Five people. Oh, thank you.
Honorable Senators, the motion having met the threshold with an overwhelming support, I do nominate that the same be prosecuted at 5 p.m. today. Senator
Thank you,
Gloria
Speaker.
Oroba, you're totally out of order. And because this is the second day we are in the chamber, I will not throw you out. But I'm going to warn you. Honorable Osotsi, kindly take your seat. Senator Osotsi, kindly take your seat. I've got a communication to make. Honorable Senators, in the Speaker's Gallery, we have 25 students, accompanied by 4 teachers from PCA Mitahato Secondary School in Kiambu County, who are undertaking an education visit in the Senate. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming guests to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I don't see the Senator for Kiambu, therefore I will call upon the Majority Leader for today to extend briefly words of welcome.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I join you in welcoming the students and teachers from Kiambu County to the Senate, and I'm sure they'll be learning a lot from us here. This is the second House of Parliament, the Senate of Kenya, which is involved with legislation and oversighting our counties. And I wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you.
Next order, clerk. Now, honorable senators, allow me to reorganize the sequence of today's order paper. We are now going to prosecute order number 10 all the way to order number 17. That business is deferred. We will proceed with order number 18 going forward. Clerk, kindly proceed to call that order.
Order number 18, the County Government's Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 25 of 2023. Second reading.
The Honorable Chiranke, that order is deferred. Next order, clerk.
Order number 19, the Public Holidays Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 31 of 2023. Second reading.
The Honorable Senator Karungo Thangwa. That order is deferred. Next order, clerk.
Order number 20, the County Assembly Services Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 34 of 2023. Second reading.
The Honorable Senator Mohamed Chute. That order is deferred. Next order, clerk.
Order number 21, the Real Estate Regulation Bill, Senate Bills number 35 of 2023. Second reading.
The Honorable Senator Alan Kipruti Chesang. That order is deferred. Next order, clerk.
Order number 22, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 37 of 2023. Second reading.
The Honorable Senator Godfrey Osotsi.
Mr. Speaker, this is an ambush. I was not really prepared, but
Senator
because I
Osotsi.
understand the bill.
Senator Osotsi.
Yes.
We want you to do good work and justice to you, this bill.
Yes.
If you're not prepared, there's always another time.
Mr. Speaker.
We can never ambush you. That we cannot.
Mr. Speaker, nevertheless, I will proceed because I understand the bill very well. Mr. Speaker, this particular bill, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, is a very important bill for this House, and I encourage the members to support the bill. The bill is born out of...
Honorable Senator Osotsi.
Yes.
Kindly move the bill fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the guidance. I beg to move that the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 37 of 2023, be moved. Be read for the first time, Mr. Speaker. For the second time.
Senator Osotsi, I can see you're struggling with this particular matter. Would you wish to recollect yourself and then come back? Because that is not how I know Senator Osotsi. This is a different Senator Osotsi I'm seeing today.
Mr. Speaker, you have guided me.
Okay, proceed.
I will proceed.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 37 of 2023, be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, this bill is born out from the experience as the chair of the County Public Investment and Special Funds Committee, where we have been having challenges with the witnesses appearing before us, particularly county governors appearing before us. We have had occasions where our programming has been affected hugely because of non-appearance by the witnesses and sometimes late request to postpone. And this has happened severally. Mr. Speaker, I therefore decided to seek for this amendment so that we can try and resolve this problem. So the bill that I'm presenting before this House, Mr. Speaker, seeks to enhance the oversight mandate of Parliament to, as the representative of the people of Kenya, guided by Article 1 of the Constitution on supremacy of the people of Kenya, that Parliament has the powers to summon anyone to appear before it. This bill is also guided by Article 125 of the Constitution that gives Parliament the powers to summon any person. The key word there is any person in the exercise of its oversight role. Mr. Speaker, this bill is also guided by Article 50 of the Constitution that talks about fair hearing of the witnesses that appear before Parliament. If I may go to the depth of the bill, Mr. Speaker, this bill seeks to amend Section 19 and 33 of Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act to provide a mechanism by which an order of arrest may be executed by Parliament itself. Mr. Speaker, we have had scenarios where some witnesses who have been summoned by various committees to appear have decided not to appear. A case in point is the governors in the last Senate who never appeared before parliamentary committees. And Parliament issued summons, those summons were ignored, and the police could not enforce those summons. So, Mr. Speaker, then that puts Parliament in a very dangerous situation. That yes, your standing orders provides for the summoning of witnesses, but you do not have the powers to arrest. So what do you do? If the Inspector General of Police refuses to arrest, what does Parliament do? I remember at some point, Mr. Speaker, some senators, I think maybe in the third Senate or second Senate, were forced to go to the office of the Inspector General to find out what was happening, because all the summons that were issued were not being enforced by the police. So this bill seeks to give Parliament the powers to arrest in a situation where the police are not able to do that for one reason or another. Mr. Speaker, The Inspector General of Police, who is also the head of the National Police Service, this bill gives him the power to the specific provision to help in the arrest. But also, it also goes ahead and says a member of staff duly authorized by the Speaker or the clerk can do that. Mr. Speaker, I know in the last Parliament there was a proposal to amend the Parliamentary Service Act so that we can have a unit of police in this House. But that has not been implemented, Mr. Speaker. So in this case, this bill will give us the option that in the event the Inspector General of Police is not able to enforce our summon through arrest, then we can do it ourselves through the direction of the Speaker or the clerk. And Mr. Speaker, this is important because if we don't do that, we will reach a point where people will not come to our committees. We will issue summons and they will not come, and they will collude with the police and they will never come. And that has happened before in this House. And we will be a toothless house that cannot bite. So this bill gives us more teeth so that the people who don't appear before us, we are able to follow the law, follow our standing orders, and arrest them. I know issues have been raised about when you arrest them, so what? Mr. Speaker, I think that is an issue that can be looked at administratively by this House. But the power to arrest, it is very important that we should have it. Mr. Speaker, the bill goes further to say that the fines that we usually charge, those who don't honor our summons, we usually charge 5,000 shillings. But this bill proposes that that amount is too low, we increase it to 2 million shillings. And that money, in the case of an individual fails to appear before us, should be paid by that person, not by the county government or by that institution where that person is heading. So, Mr. Speaker, this will be a bigger pain to them because most of them have been coming. You tell them about 500 and they easily pay it. But, Mr. Speaker, if we enhance the fine to 2 million shillings, I think that will be a heavy burden to them, and the cost of not appearing before Senate or before National Assembly will be higher. So people will be compelled to appear before us. Mr. Speaker, this bill, though someone may argue that it is too punitive, but the bill provides that the process will be fair. And the provisions of Article 50 will be followed. Mr. Speaker, I think we must appreciate one thing. The Constitution gives this House immense powers under Article 125 to summon everyone under the sun. Everyone under the sun, including even the President. This House has the powers to summon anyone to appear before this House. And if for any one reason that person does not come, after several invitations as per our standing orders, and we issue summons, we have the powers to go further than that and arrest that person to come before us, if the police are not able to do that. We are going to have the powers to have a higher fine. In fact, some people told me that this 2 million is still too low. We should have increased it to maybe 5 million or even 10 million, so that the people can see the pain. Mr. Speaker, you will agree with me that the basis of this amendment is to protect the supremacy of parliament. Is to protect the supremacy of parliament. It is very disappointing that our committees work so hard. They invite witnesses, and witnesses just decide to stay at home, not to appear before us.
Yes, what is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, Senator, if you could yield. I raise understanding order number 105. The Senator is articulating a very important issue. He has told us, Mr. Speaker, that if the police refuse to arrest, we arrest ourselves. Mr. Speaker, could he substantiate so that we understand what he means? Is it that the sergeant at arms will arrest, or the members of the committee will go and arrest, or the chairman? We just want to be clear as we support you, because we need these people to come before us. Could you clarify?
Senator Boni.
Yes.
Senator Sotsi is yet to conclude his moving remarks. If you could be a little bit patient, maybe those concerns will be addressed before he concludes. Kindly proceed, Senator.
Mr. Speaker, I think my good brother, Senator Boni, knows that even the citizens have powers to arrest. That's why we have citizens arrest. But in this case, I will kindly ask him to read the bill, because the bill is proposing that the clerk and or the speaker may cause the arrest of these witnesses. It is in the bill. So I ask you to read the bill, which you get more details about it. Mr. Speaker, the Powers and Privilege Act is a very important instrument for this House, because it helps us to perform our duties, and it is an act that, if we really want to enhance the powers of this House, it is an act where we need to go and seek amendments. I am aware Senator Mugatana has proposed amendment to this act as well, to try and make sure that the resolutions we make in this House are implemented by the relevant agencies. This particular amendment, Mr. Speaker, it is going to enhance that. It is going to enhance our powers. We are not the ones who are going to arrest, but the institution is going to do that, under the Speaker or the clerk, as per the Act. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to belabor this, because this is a very small bill, to ask the members to support this bill, and this bill will make our work here very productive, because the current scenario, it is a scenario that it is very annoying, very frustrating, and very demeaning to this House, where witnesses are invited and they refuse to come. And if the police don't take any action, we are incapacitated, we can't do much. So, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move, and I ask my good friend, the Senator of Nairobi, Edwin Sifuna, to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the bill. Mr. Speaker, I am privileged to serve in 3 very powerful committees of this House. One of them is the Senate Energy Committee. Mr. Speaker, following the incident at Mradi in Embakasi East a few days ago, we as the Senate Energy Committee determined that we needed to speak to those who are responsible for the licensing of installations such as those that caused a tragedy in Embakasi East. And we started by inviting the Cabinet Secretary for Energy, Mr. Davis Chirchir, to appear before our committee this morning. Mr. Speaker, needless to say, I arrived at the venue of the meeting on time, together with my colleagues, the Chairman, Honorable Matinga, the Senator of Nyeri, together with the Member of Parliament for Embakasi East, Honorable Babu Owino. Mr. Speaker, we were shocked to be notified that a letter was dispatched to the committee last night, the 13th of February, that the Cabinet Secretary was out of the country, and that is all we were told. Of course, even though invitations were extended to the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, there was no mention of whether they were in the country or whether they even received our communication or anything. There was nobody from EPRA. There was nobody from the county government of Nairobi. So we were seated there, Mr. Speaker, looking like people who don't have work to do, with no witnesses to appear before us. Mr. Speaker, I also serve in the Senate Transport and Housing Committee, which is chaired very ably by the Senator for Kiambu. Mr. Speaker, you know that this thing called affordable housing is all the rage in the country right now. There is no county in Nairobi, in Kenya currently, where there are more proposed housing developments than Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, as we speak in this county, we have earmarked 13 county government estates, the old city council estates, for redevelopment. Mr. Speaker, you would expect that in a county such as this, where projects of that magnitude are happening, robust conversation is had with the county government of Nairobi and with the citizens and the residents of the affected areas, so that when this project is done, I will not stand here again and read a report similar to the one our committee read on the Buxton project in Mombasa. Would you believe it, Mr. Speaker, that even after writing invitations, summons to the county governor of Nairobi, Honorable Sakaja, on 5 different instances, Governor Sakaja has refused, failed, and or neglected to appear before the Housing Committee of the Senate. People, the residents of these estates, they come very early to our committees because these committees offer hope, a channel for them to be heard. If you listen to the leadership of Afa Jericho, one of the estates, Mr. Speaker, they have never been listened to by the county government. What the county government calls public participation, in the view of the residents of Jericho, is not public participation. They have never been consulted on this project. And yet, Mr. Speaker, they are the ones who are supposed to cede their land that they have lived on for years, even before some of us were born, for this project to go ahead. And yet, when we summon the county governor, he doesn't appear. So what are we supposed to do as members of the committee and senators in this House? Which is why, Mr. Speaker, I want to very strongly urge our colleagues in this House. This is a frustration we all go through in our committees and even in this House. Mr. Speaker, I also serve in the Senate Business Committee. We sit down, we receive questions for cabinet secretaries from our colleagues, and we are at pains to schedule these questions because we can see that many of the cabinet secretaries will at times send word to the Speaker a day before they are scheduled to appear before this House that they are not coming to appear. I was looking at the schedule of questions yesterday. Some of the questions, Mr. Speaker, relate to matters that are long gone. Even if the CS appeared now, it would not be a current conversation to have in the Republic today. Mr. Speaker, what is this House supposed to do? Therefore, I want to say that given my short experience in the time that I've been a senator for Nairobi, I strongly suggest and I very strongly urge members of this House to support these amendments. Mr. Speaker, there was an incident I've never forgotten where one of the committees imposed the fine that is currently on the books of 500,000 shillings. And a governor asked our committee clerk, does the committee have a pay bill number or a till number? Because the amount imposed is so minimal, it can fit on your M-Pesa account. So money for them is not a problem. They would rather ignore summons of the House and summons of the committees and then ask the committee, who is your treasurer? Where can I send this money? What is the M-Pesa number? So for Senator Ososi to propose that this fine be enhanced to at least 2 million shillings, I think this is something that is welcome and we must all support. Mr. Speaker, we have also struggled with this question of arrest. And I heard Senator Boni asking how should we facilitate this arrest. In fact, Mr. Speaker, for as long as this House and the institution of Parliament relies on any other governmental agency or institution to make sure that its business goes on, it will never happen. We need this institution to have the powers to be able to arrest these people, to arrest and present witnesses before the committees. And I am in support fully of the proposition by Senator Ososi to give this House those powers. Mr. Speaker, these are powers that I know you will exercise judiciously. You will not be doing the Kamata Friday that we have seen other agencies doing. This will be specifically... Mr. Speaker, protect me.
Order,
protect me.
Order, senators. Proceed, Senator.
Mr. Speaker, I trust that the House will exercise these powers judiciously and that it will only be for purposes of making sure that people appear before our committees, and especially where we have failed to secure that attendance. Mr. Speaker, there's also a very interesting proposal here. If you look at clause 4, subsection 7, I think Senator Ososi here wanted that this institution of Parliament should also have its own holding cells. Because you can see, Mr. Speaker, at 7A, he said that a person arrested under subsection 3 shall be held at such a place as specified in the National Police Service Act, or as shall be designated by the clerk for purposes of holding such persons. So, Mr. Speaker, you can find a nice place with tea and mandazi for them to chill there as they wait to appear before the committee. But at least they will be within the possession of the institution of Parliament. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I want to speak to the fine that has been proposed to be imposed under subsection 5 of the amendment. Mr. Speaker, also enhancing the fine to 2 million shillings for specific conduct during the appearance of a witness before a committee. Mr. Speaker, there's one time, and members of the Parliamentary Accounts Committee, the CPAC committee, can bear me witness. A governor appeared before us, and when our chairman, the most honorable senator for Homa Bay, Moses Kajwang, asked the governor to take oath, he had the audacity to ask the committee, under which law are you asking me to take oath? Before, of course, we went ahead to educate him that that is a constitutional requirement when you are appearing before this House or before a committee of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, Senator Ososi has gone further than the Constitution to impose a fine to those who refuse to take oath before committees, because we have seen attempts and even others refusing to take oath for whatever reason, because we would want that the evidence that is given to the House or to the committee be evidence under oath. Number 2, he has proposed a fine for those who refuse to remain until the end, because these people are always busier than Parliament. They will appear before you and tell the chairman, we only have 1 hour, I have a flight to South Africa because it's my birthday. Mr. Speaker, the sort of contempt that we are being subjected to in the committees must stop. So this particular section, Senator Ososi, as the chairperson of PIC, will be able to hold those witnesses there until he releases them, until he has answered all the questions that he has asked to appear to answer. Number 3, there are those who give dodgy answers. You ask a question and you can see the governor or the entity is dodging the question. Mr. Speaker, what we must do is to find these people who want to reduce the institution of Parliament to something of a joke. And then, Mr. Speaker, lastly, there is an amendment. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if there's a problem with the AC in the House, because I can see my lady colleagues.
Sergeant at Arms.
I don't know if it is me or it's because it's Ash Wednesday.
Kindly.
I think
Order.
it's because...
Order, senators. Certainly, Senator Gloria is uncomfortable. Kindly put on the AC. Can you switch on the AC, please? Order.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's because it's Ash Wednesday, a very important day of the calendar.
Order.
I'm not aware of any
Senator
other.
Gloria.
Lastly, Mr. Speaker, witnesses who fail to produce documents. We have had instances before the Public Accounts Committee where an entity, the accounting officer of an entity will show up to a committee and just refuse to produce documentation that has already been requested formally and way ahead of time. So, Mr. Speaker, as I finish, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I hope our colleagues see that these are not frustrations that are shared only on the minority side, because we are all in these committees, we have experienced all of these things, and there is no other way to give this House teeth and to make sure that we are able to execute our mandate than to tie up these loose ends that will ensure that we are able to do our jobs effectively. Mr. Speaker, I second.
Honourable Senators, I will proceed to propose the question that the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 37 on 2023, be now read a second time. I will, at this juncture, allow intervention from senators, so if you're interested in making a contribution, you need to key in. Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very important bill. Mr. Speaker, Article 125 of the Constitution gives the House powers equivalent to that of the High Court. And what happens with the High Court, first of all, you can be contempt of court. There can be contempt of court at the High Court. But when you are contemptuous of the High Court, then the judge has powers to order the orderlies who are there within court to arrest that particular person before the court or be sought by police and be brought before the court. And if they don't purge the contempt, then they are actually committed, either 6 months or as the judge could decide. And then when you compare that with the House, again, we are able to compare our production of documents and to issue commission or request to examine witnesses abroad. That can still be done by this House. Mr. Speaker, the difficulty we are confronted with is one whereby the police are not willing to do their job or are unable to find this particular person to present them before the House, or if they find them, we don't have enough teeth to bite, and I believe this is what Honorable Tsotsi is seeking. The enhancement of the fines is good, but Mr. Speaker, we need to have more teeth than just a fine. Now that we are equivalent to the High Court in terms of the powers the committees or this House exercises. And Mr. Speaker, although this may not exactly follow under this particular act we are trying to amend, probably could also come under Parliamentary Service Commission Act. Mr. Speaker, for these particular purposes, and now that we are dealing with the devolution, and the money is involved, serious money, and most probably, from the recommendations of Parliament, a governor or an officer in the county government can be prosecuted. So Mr. Speaker, in my own opinion, and I think if Senator Osotsi finds it good, or any of us, we can amend it further to enhance the powers we have in such a way that the wing we have for security can also be enhanced in a way that the Speaker can be able to order our own police, so that either sergeant at arms or the police officer who work with us. Of course, if it's a police officer, obviously it goes directly to the Inspector General. But we could also summon the Inspector General. And one of the things the House can do is to move proceedings against that particular officer, including impeachment. Although now impeachment goes into a different realm of the Constitution, probably the Constitution is tied into this. And these are some of the proposals we need to have, so that if a governor is contemptuous of this House, then it is equivalent to them being contemptuous of their own duties in their respective counties. And something akin to impeachment could be useful, so that a governor knows if he is summoned and is uncooperated, is not cooperating, is a hostile witness, then this House can find him not fit to hold office, and probably the House can convene itself on a trial within a trial, and impeachment proceedings ensue to this particular governor, whether they have been found by the police or not, and this House then could pass such a sentence. I think in such a way that will have teeth enough to bite. But that means probably amendment of the Constitution, probably amendment of other acts like Parliamentary Service Commission, so that we have a police wing under the command of the Speaker of the Senate or the Speaker of the National Assembly. And that then gives us power directly to be able to deal with the matter. So in the next amendment of the Constitution, this could be good. But for now, for the purposes of this debate and what we have before us, then the fine is appropriate. But we need to have powers to be able to commit into some contempt, just like the High Court. And that can only be in a direction of an impeachment proceedings or something similar to that, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, we'll keep on summoning people. They'll keep on appearing and become uncooperative. Then the committee will be as good as useless if it cannot extract enough information to be able to propose prosecution of that particular officer. Prosecution is also good in this regards that if a governor then is sent to jail, then automatically have to vacate office depending on the number of years they've been jailed and their absence from their office. So I believe from the Constitution we made in 2010, there is a lot more, Mr. Speaker, we can be able to do so that we can make devolution effective and especially the discipline of governors. And most probably any other process of dealing with the governors is much longer, is frustrating, and the sure way if this house has more teeth to bite other than what we have in Article 125, or in future considerations of amendment of the Constitution, we could make Article 125 more effective and that we could be able now to effect what is similar to contempt of the House or contempt of court in accordance with Article 25. So I do support Honorable Otsotsi and think that we need to amend, to make further amendments to add more teeth so that this House can be effective and that when we summon a governor will appear even 15 minutes before the appointed time for fear of what may happen the moment they appear before the House. I do support and recommend that we should be working on further amendments at third reading. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Cherarke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and Happy New Year, and it's good to have you back on the seat. Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate Senator Otsotsi. I think he's starting a year with a bang. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I agree. You know, him being the chair of CPIC is proposing very important, and it will spur accountability committees, Madam Speaker. Senator Otsotsi being the chair of PIC and my neighbor from where we come from, this is a very good proposal. This is a bipartisan proposal, and I think all of us should support. It will make our work very easier and efficient. The Speaker, I've met Senator Otsotsi chairing one of his committee sessions on a lighter touch. Madam Speaker, Otsotsi is proposing tough questions, but when clients appear before him, he's always very kind. But I know that's a story. We can always have a conversation with him. Madam Speaker, this amendment is very important. I think all of us agree that Parliament, it enjoys the same status as the High Court because of quasi-judicial powers that we have. Article 125 to ensure we have effectiveness, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the issue of raising fine for any people who violates Powers and Privileges Act or fails to appear as a witness before any committee of 2 million, I think it is too little money. With the economic times that we are facing, we should be upgrading it to 5 million so that people can feel the pain. Our agenda is to inflict the pain in courts to ensure that it becomes so painful that when you hear you need to appear before a committee of Parliament of the Republic of Kenya, you shudder with morbid fear so that you appear, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that is the love we should share with people who don't want to appear before Parliament, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and therefore, when it comes to third reading, I think we need to enhance, and I am proposing, I know the powers and privileges as already elaborated, Madam Speaker, is we ensure, Madam Speaker, we recover, you must prove that it is from your own resources, from your own money. In fact, we should have an affidavit to that effect to say if witness X is paying 5 million, it should be proven that it is from your own personal money. Because we know in this country, Madam Speaker, there is an appetite towards misuse and abuse of public resources, Madam Speaker. So when you are being fined by the committee, it must be shown that the 5 million or 2 million you paid before the committee through our clerk, you must own each and every cent, so that we fight corruption where it matters, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my only concern is on clause 3. We should also propose, I don't know what we can think with this, Madam Speaker, is if we have an agency like Embakasi car's explosion that happened, should we wait for 7 days for the witness to appear? If it is something that is urgent like COVID pandemic, should we wait for 7 days to have that person? Why don't we make a provision, and I don't know when it comes to third reading, where we create an exception, an exemption, that when an agency happens in the country, like floods, other things, Madam Speaker, that is, cannot be intervened, with that witness should be appear as soon as possible. Where you, Madam Speaker, you can order a house to go to a recess and invite that witness to appear immediately if there is a matter that becomes an urgent, Madam Speaker. Speaker, I propose that we also create our own parliamentary police unit, just like anti-stock theft police unit, Madam Speaker, ATPU. You know, anti-stock theft police unit deals with cattle rustlers and bandits. We must in equal measure deal with these bandits of the law, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I'm proposing, and it is good the commissioner is here in the House, my side, one of the senior counsel, Okongo Mugeni, is here. We can, under Judicial Service Commission and in partnership with National Police Service Commission, to create a parliamentary police unit, so that the clerk and the speaker can direct our own police unit to go and frog march those people who are violating the Constitution, Madam Speaker. And we will create a committee to oversee, and I'll propose at that point to be the chair of such committee, Madam Speaker, because it is like working in traffic police department in police, Madam Speaker, police service. So what we are proposing is that let us have a police unit, Madam Speaker, that only is domiciled within Parliament of the Republic of Kenya. The other day, Madam Speaker, I saw the Cabinet Secretary form a police unit to fight against coffee, or was it against rice theft and some other things. So these are things that we can discuss so that our clerk and you, the speaker, you can give directions to such officers to go and frog march, Madam Speaker, so that we can see. Madam Speaker, at that point I wanted to make, of course this has been indicated as a civil debt, Madam Speaker, we need to ensure, Madam Speaker, I agree with Senator of Nairobi, as one of the powerful vice chairs of county public accounts, we have had run-in with some of the witnesses, Madam Speaker, who come and refuse to talk. They don't want to produce documents. They become condescending. I remember a governor, I don't want to name, because comes from my side of coalition, made condescending remarks against our chair, our esteemed, God-fearing chair, Madam Speaker, and it was embarrassing because we expected, and to make the matters worse, is a former member of this House. So sometimes we find it cantankerous, and unfortunately, Madam Speaker, that people come to committee, they don't want to produce documents, they don't want to be civil, they don't want to be patient. There is one governor, and I hope the ODM Secretary General is listening, I don't want to name him. He wanted us to quickly summarize the appearances because he was flying to India, Madam Speaker. So those are some of the challenges that we are facing as a committee, and I'm happy the leader of minority, Senator Matzai, who is a former judge, retired, should be aware that these are the problems we are facing in committees. Madam Speaker, we should allow our committees, when we tell a witness to produce a document, we are not doing it for the sake of Senate. Maybe you want to see the expenditure of Forcha of Dandora Stadium in Nairobi. We would want to know who was paid. What was the company, for example? What happened in Embakasi cars explosion, Madam Speaker? Who did not do their job? Who deleted their job? That is the future of the Kenya we want, Madam Speaker. The fourth point, Madam Speaker, I want to make is when we visit your county, like Busia or Kakamega or Mandera or Kilifi or Kitui, Madam Speaker. And it is good the next governor of Kitui is here with us, Mheshimiwa Enoch Wambua, Madam Speaker. When we decide to visit a project, Madam Speaker, there is always a sabotage against our committees. I would have expected Senator Utsosi to add something, because governors and other entities are mischievous. They will ensure when you want to visit a project, they will tell you the road is not accessible, the security is not good. I remember when a committee of labor wanted to meet the victims of first choice fraud in Eldoret. They were called at somewhere called Ahero, Awasi, that you cannot proceed to Eldoret, your security is not assured. Madam Speaker, where are we headed as a country? We have seen where Parliament can visit even Ukraine, where the bombs are flying left, right, and center. But you are being told, don't go to a certain place to investigate, at the security is not assured, Madam Speaker. I remember, and Senator Chute can bear me witness, I don't know where he is, and a number of members of Trade Committee. Not Trade Committee, I think Trade Committee, the chair is here, Senator Seki. They were visiting ICDC to check on the issue of edible oils. The CEO decided not to cooperate at all. In fact, they ensured the committee does not visit and see, and yet it was a committee that should have visited that place, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm proposing through Senator Utsosi, when it comes to third reading or during the amendment stage, we should say something about witnesses or entities who do not allow Parliament to access the premises to assess the situation. For example, if the Committee of Energy wants to visit Embakasi, we don't want any entity to prevent or to become stumbling block for a committee to function properly, Madam Speaker. So let us not have a conversation, Madam Speaker, of looking at the witness appearing before our committee. Let us also have a way. We should even say, if a witness or a governor or anybody prevents a committee from accessing a site of interest of the committee in their course of committee work, we should also ensure we fine them 5 million Kenya shillings, Madam Speaker. I think that would be very important, Madam Speaker. And then, but finally, we should also find a way of doing mental assessment of some of the witnesses, Madam Speaker. Because I was sitting in another committee, Madam Speaker, and the witness started wailing, and the members ran away, Madam Speaker. So we should also find a way of looking at the aptitude or the mental stability of some of the witnesses, Madam Speaker. I don't know what we can do, because some witnesses can pledge lucid moments, or they were not aware of what was happening, Madam Speaker. By all instances, I think this is a good bill, Madam Speaker, because this is a straightforward bill. I don't want to belabor the point, and I know most of my colleagues want to say something, Madam Speaker, and I'm happy my brother, Senator Oburu Odinga, is here, and Happy New Year. And I'm told you are still a young child, so Madam Speaker, I heard him saying something like that, and it's good to see him well and alive and smiling, Madam Speaker. With those many remarks, I support this bill, and let us process quickly for our committees to function efficiently and effectively. I thank you.
Senator Wambua.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, from the onset, I stand in full support of this bill. Having said that, Madam Speaker, I will also seek your protection from my colleagues. Madam Speaker, yesterday in one of the committee meetings, I am told the senator for Kisumu addressed my governor to the effect that he should prepare the books properly, so that when Senator Wambua becomes the next governor, then things in Kitui are not very bad. Now, Madam Speaker, today you've had Senator Cherargei, my friend, referring to me as the next governor of Kitui County. Madam Speaker, I want to go on record and say, at the fullness of God's timing, the people of Kitui County will decide what they want. And when they make that decision, then we can only follow. Today we are here, Madam Speaker, to prosecute serious business on a very serious matter. And I want to thank Senator, my brother, my friend, the senator from Vihiga, Godfrey Ososi, for coming up with such a bill. Madam Speaker, I congratulate him because a lot of us are victims of great mischief. And Madam Speaker, we have had experiences that border on gross impunity from both the national executive and the executives of our county governments. Now, Speaker, I would want to narrate a situation that I found myself in when we came back to the Senate in the year 2022. Madam Speaker, it will be remembered that around October of 2022, this country was undergoing serious drought. And Madam Speaker, around that time, I raised a statement on the floor of this House on the drought mitigation measures that the Ministry of Agriculture was undertaking to save our people from imminent death out of starvation, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, 1 year down the line, up to around October 2023, the Minister for Agriculture had declined invitations, summons from the Agriculture Committee, and my statement was still pending, awaiting a response from the CS in November of 2023, at a time that we were experiencing serious rainfall across the country. So, Madam Speaker, one day I'm told that the minister is now coming to respond to my question, my statement 1 year later. And the circumstances had completely changed. Madam Speaker, I said I was not going to aid the Cabinet Secretary to insult my intelligence. And so I dropped that statement and withdrew my interest in it. Madam Speaker, these are the things that are making Senator Ososi think through the pain and the tribulation that committees of the Senate have endured from the executives, both at the national government and at the county levels. Madam Speaker, I like the proposal, though I saw a few of my colleagues smiling suggestively on this proposal that the Speaker and the clerk could effect the arrest. Madam Speaker, come to think of it, in most cases, our police service has either been unwilling or unable to take firm decisions against senior members of the executive. Madam Speaker, there is a proposal that has been brought on the floor, and that's what the one I want to prosecute, that maybe it is the high time that the Parliamentary Service Commission, through this bill, thinks very seriously about the establishment of a parliamentary police service. Because, Madam Speaker, the import of the arrests being proposed by Senator Ososi is not necessarily for the presentation of the arrested persons before courts. They are supposed to be arrested and presented either in plenary or in committees. And so, Madam Speaker, the power to arrest and present the arrested persons before committees of Parliament or in plenary should surely rest with a service that is answerable to Parliament, not answerable to the same executive that is being followed up. And Madam Speaker, even as we talk about the power to arrest by the parliamentary police service that we are proposing, Madam Speaker, I would go further. Maybe you should propose these amendments in that reading. That, in fact, the security of members should be provided by officers from the parliamentary police service. Because this thing, Madam Speaker, of having to beg the executive, the National Police Service, to provide members with security, and they decide to withdraw them at will, Madam Speaker, that is not even sustainable. So if we had a parliamentary police service, which is properly equipped and properly trained on public relations, I'm seeing a situation where, Madam Speaker, for example, if they want to go and arrest the governor of Nairobi, my friend, Governor Sakaja, and I'm not saying that they should arrest him, they will use the demeanor of an elite squad. In Swahili, they would say, naomba nikushike. You know, they will be humane. They will know how to deal with VIPs. As opposed to the current situation, Mr. Speaker, where the discretion of whether to be... Madam Speaker, I need your protection from Senator Shakila.
Order, Senator Shakila and Senator Hezena. Can we listen, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, sometimes you wouldn't even know whether maybe Senator Shakila is rejoicing that a senator is doing a good job on the floor, or she is discussing other things, but I'm happy for your protection, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, there is an amendment that I will ask my brother to consider in that reading. You know, that's in clause 6, that where an order of arrest is to be effected by an officer of a House of Parliament, the Inspector General shall facilitate the arrest as may be required by the clerk. Madam Speaker, remember in the first place, the reason why Parliament is effecting the arrest is because the IG is either unwilling or unable to effect that arrest. So it should not be the same person that we resort to effect the arrest through Parliament. So my proposal would be that we leave the Inspector General of Police completely out of this arrangement, so that, and the arrest should be purposeful. As I said, we are not arresting governors, we are not arresting cabinet secretaries to present them before a court of law. We are arresting them to present them before committees of Parliament or in the plenary of the Senate. Madam Speaker, with those many remarks, I do support.
Senator Oruova.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this bill by Senator Osotsi, Madam Speaker. I have been in the Senate for about maybe 17 months, and I have seen how we struggle as legislators to play our role in oversight. I have seen how we literally are sent by the people who put us in these positions to hold accountable certain offices, and we are unable, because the most we can do is prepare a statement, move a bill, raise a question, but at the end of the day, even these offices that we are playing oversight are unable to take us seriously, because what is the worst that we can do as a house? Well, maybe we can propose something that should be implemented, or we can, create a bill that will take another 2 years to be assented into law. And sometimes it's very, very, very frustrating. Madam Speaker, in a time like now, where as women of this country, we are literally wondering where we are going to cry, Madam Speaker. We are wondering what we are going to do. People are asking us, what are you doing in Parliament? What kind of laws are you pushing in Parliament? But Madam Speaker, you cannot legislate good behavior if you do not have the tools to be able to do this, Madam Speaker. For instance, we have seen the cases of femicide.
Madam Speaker, rising. Why? Because there are no repercussions. Because people think there's nothing that can be done. After all, even if I'm taken to remand, I'll be given a cash bail, I will come out, I will prolong the process in the judiciary, and all these, tactics that are being used. Madam Speaker, a clear example is when we call upon a certain state agency, an officer of a state department, a minister, someone in authority who has the tools to actually make the changes that we need in that space to safeguard women, and they simply say that they are unavailable. Madam Speaker, I am looking forward to understand this bill further. I know Senator Ososi said that, we can be able to, once this bill passes and it is assented, we can be able to make arrests, Madam Speaker. But I want to ask that while we are looking into that amendment, for instance, in this issue of the femicide that we are talking about, a particular example, when we had that man called Matara, who had been reported severally, 3 or 4 cases had been put out at the gender desk, Madam Speaker. As a house that plays oversight, that safeguards Kenyans, and particularly women, we should be able at one point to say, hey, listen, we are not only writing a letter to ask the IG to come here so that we can ask him, what is the gender desk about? We should be able to reach a point where, if we are not getting the proper answers, if we are not being given, or if we are not being told what is not happening in those departments, we should be able as a house to say, okay, because there's no clarity on this matter, because the certain officer that requires to give clarity is not available, by all means, Madam Speaker, we should have the powers to arrest that person, bring them to account to this house, and if by all means force that we get some explanations, Madam Speaker. I am looking forward to the day when we are not only raising statements here, and the statements are being forwarded to the committees, and the committees are negotiating with the ministries or the state departments or the agencies. I'm looking forward to the day when, even when a statement is raised regarding a department, an office, a ministry, an agency that you hold and you are responsible as an accounting officer in government, Madam Speaker, that you will be trembling because the Senate has summoned you to come and tell Kenyans what is happening, Madam Speaker. Until that day comes, we are going to just be talking and talking and talking and begging that the upper house is given the powers, and the impact of our work will be very, very minimal, Madam Speaker. This particular day, I would like, if I was in the committee of security, I would have summoned the IG. We cannot be allowing our women and girls to be demonstrating on the streets of Nairobi when us as legislators, we have no powers to summon those officers that be and ask them what is happening. Why aren't all these criminals who are killing our women being arrested? Why aren't we seeing any convictions? Why aren't we seeing any movement in terms of the change that we are legislating in this house, Madam Speaker? There should be a provision in this amendment bill, and I want to sit down with Senator Osotsi after this session and ask him, what happens when the person in question is the IG? Can we arrest him? What happens? Because, Madam Speaker, we are tired. We are tired as women. We are knocking in every single office. We are going to that office, to this ministry, to what? And at the end of the day, people are looking at us in this house here wondering, Ruoba, we sent you there to fight for women. Our women are dying. And you are just giving us statements, summoning people to the house, calling I don't know which committee. Kenyans do not care about the bureaucratic processes that we have here. Kenyans want to see us in action. So I must support this bill because at this point, Madam Speaker, and I don't want to sound drunk in power, I would really like to have powers to arrest these men who are killing our women and are finding all these legal loopholes to maneuver the judicial system. I want to have powers as the senator who was nominated to represent women to stand in this house and say that we must summon the IG, we must summon the head of the gender desk. And if they are not interested to come and discuss those issues with us, we must be able to arrest them. So, Madam Speaker, in this particular bill, which is talking about amending, I know Senator Dulo is wondering whether we are discussing gender. We are discussing a bill about empowering this house, the upper house, to be able to play oversight to an extent that people tremble, the authorities that be tremble. When they are being summoned to be told why are Kenyans dying, they will understand that we mean serious business. Madam Speaker, I'm very sad by the way on this day. It's just that I am gathering all the courage to make sure that I represent the people who sent me here well. Madam Speaker, we are tired of demonstrations. We are tired of writing statements. We are getting even tired to legislate further legislation, because how much longer we will legislate and legislate and legislate, but if this legislation is not being implemented, Madam Speaker, we will end up with the best laws, the best policies, the best human resource, 67 senators sitting in the upper house with no tools and no power to be able to say to an individual in a state agency that, listen, the work you're supposed to do, you are not doing. So therefore, Madam Speaker, as I support this bill by Senator Osotsi, I am asking Senator Osotsi, think through it. Because the matters that are affecting women require that even this bill must give us some sort of power, authority to be able to arrest the IG, the head of the gender department, if they are not willing to protect our women, if they are not willing to implement the laws that are there. We want this bill not only to cover that we are arresting ministers because they did not come to committees. We want this bill to reflect on the representation of people and particularly women out there, Madam Speaker. So, therefore, I support this bill. And being a Black Valentine's Day, Madam Speaker, you see we are in black and red. And we are very sad about everything that is happening to our women in Kenya. As I support this bill, I want to say this. We work hard as legislators, but the people might not understand the bureaucratic processes of playing oversight. So this is an important tool that we require as the upper house to be able to have an impact down to the grassroots level. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support.
Honorable members, I have a communication. Honorable Senators, in the public gallery, we have 52 students accompanied by 3 teachers from Othaya Boys in Nyeri County who are undertaking an education visit in the Senate. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. I would like to, I can't see the Honorable Senator from Nyeri. I think I request Senator Nyamu to welcome them in the Senate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you, students from Othaya Primary or High School. Yeah, from Othaya in Nyeri County. My name is Senator Karen Nyamu from Nairobi, but Madam Speaker has given me the honors to give you a warm welcome here. May you fulfill the purpose that brought you here. May you learn as much as possible. And most importantly, may you get inspired to go for your dreams. And may you challenge yourselves that you can also be in this house one day. Your senator, I wish he was here, so that you can also get to hear from somebody who is from home. But I would wish you to dream, any dream. Everything is possible. Don't limit yourself. Don't question yourself. Don't second guess a dream that you have or that comes to you. So we hope this session will be very inspiring to you as much as it will be a learning one. And karibuni sana. Thank you.
Senator Ledame.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in less than 5 minutes, I rise to support this amendment to the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act. Madam Speaker, respect to Parliament is something which is paramount. And any attempt to disregard summons, that is a constant thing for both the executive, is a clear undermining of this legislative arm of government. The senator from Vihiga thought it wise, and I just want to remind him that this is a matter that must be supported by both sides of the divide. It must be supported because even in the name of the bill, it is parliamentary powers and privileges. Madam Speaker, if you look at Article 125 of the Constitution, it is quite clear. It gives either House of Parliament, committees, the same powers as a High Court. I've heard my colleagues talk about giving Parliament the power to arrest, but I hold a different view. I think that power to arrest has to remain with the police because that's what the Constitution defines. The only thing that I would request is that in this bill, and I hope that my brother, Senator from Vihiga, can amend the section where he's talking about, in his amendment, section 19.5, where he's 7, where he says a person arrested under subsection 3 shall be held at a place as specified in the National Police Service Act, or shall be designed by the clerk for the purpose of holding such a person. I don't believe we should invite ourselves to the work of the police. I think the police should be able to do their work. There is a clear separation of powers between the three arms of government. Ours is to call for the respect of this august House. Madam Speaker, when the framers of the Constitution defined Article 125, it's because they clearly understood that once you are summoned to appear before this House as a witness and fail to appear, the framers of the Constitution knew it, that the executive arm of government, which wants to enjoy a cordial relationship with this other arm of government, will facilitate to ensure that you are arrested and you are compelled to appear before that House. One of the things that I support in this amendment is the fact that the fines are being increased from $500,000 to $2 million. Madam Speaker, when I was a member of the Parliament of PAC, by then it was both PAC and PIC, we did exercise Section 19 of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges, which my brother is now seeking to amend. And we compelled 2 governors. I know the former governor of Kitui, Charity Ngilu, paid $500,000. I know we also compelled the former governor of Taita Taveta, not Taita Taveta, but Kwale, to pay $200,000. And by then, it was very clear, because I've seen the amendment here, and I don't know whether it was mistyped or something, that these funds are not from the public offer, but from the personal's account. So whether we want to reiterate that in this amendment, it is something for us to think about. But I think the most important thing that we have to put clear here to the public is for them to know and to understand that it is not that we just want to have so many privileges. In fact, I don't understand what is privilege about this amendment. It is because we want to ensure a fiduciary duty. Madam Speaker, every citizen of this country has got the legal obligation to ensure that they respect the three arms of government. We have been having a serious problem. This morning, Madam Speaker, while we were busy prosecuting other business here, we excused ourselves, through the permission of the Speaker, to be able to go and interrogate the Cabinet Secretary of Energy on the recent occurrences in Embakasi. But that Cabinet Secretary failed to appear. He failed to appear because maybe the way our laws are drafted, it makes it easy for him to be invited. You know, you can be invited, you send a letter, and then you are invited again. And then the third time is when the committee now sits and says, we've invited this witness 3 times and they have failed to appear. Now we are going to summon. I'm quite happy with the new amendment which is being introduced in this bill, which is 5B, which I hope my brother, Senator from Nandi, was here, that it says that despite subsection 5A, the relevant house or its committee may require a person to appear before it within a shorter period of time, as it may determine, taking into account the urgency of the matter before the House of Committee or committee. Madam Speaker, I'd like to beseech my brother to change, to remove that may, and to make it shall. Because on this occasion today, we had the honorable member from Embakasi coming there, and you could see the gentleman was shaken. He was feeling, he was carrying the pain of the citizens of Embakasi, saying that there are people who are in hospital, the bills are skyrocketing in both public and private hospitals. But the Cabinet Secretary and my friend Kipto decided they shall go and have their own meetings and decide not to appear. I think it's about time, Madam Speaker, as I end. It's about time that we now truly become our brother's keepers. We now really try to ask ourselves, what are we going to be reminded, or how are we going to be remembered when our time in this world comes to an end? It is time that we as legislators and also as citizens of this country, both in the judiciary, the legislative arm of government, and the executive, to remember that whatever we are doing here, it is not for us to carry to our graves, but for us to be able to leave this country a better place than we found it. And the only way to do it is to ensure that we adhere strictly to the rule of law. So I support the amendments. I plead with my brother to make sure that he corrects a few things, and to emphasize one thing, that the subpoenas or the summons of witnesses, whenever a witness receives that summon, that's a legal document that carries serious consequences. And if they fail to appear, in fact, one thing you should include here is that where a witness fails to appear more than once, and they are forced to pay the fine, the next thing that should happen is for this House to censure that witness. That is the only time that this Parliament will be taken seriously. I love the way we started business this session. I hope that we can deal with things in a bipartisan manner so that we leave this country a better place than we found it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Khalwale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this amendment bill strongly. I know the chair of PIC, like the chairs of all oversight committees, there's a lot of frustration when you expect witnesses to come and they don't come. But Madam Speaker, as I support the amendment bill, I want to remind colleagues that one of the biggest frustrations is for us to legislate, The president gives assent, and then when the bill is challenged in a court of law, it is declared unconstitutional. Be careful about this amendment. Senator Osotsi, I urge you to reflect on this amendment, because what you're asking for, you're already given in 125 of the Constitution. It tells you in 125, my brother, that you have the power, A, to enforce the attendance of witnesses and examine them on oath, affirmation, or otherwise, and B, to compel the production of documents, and C, to issue a commission or a request to examine witnesses abroad. The Constitution has given you more than even what you're asking for. What's more, Senator Osotsi, as I request you to reflect on your amendment, I want to invite you to the establishment of the security organs in this Constitution, which says in 238 that our security organs are the national security, the Kenya Police, the National Intelligence Service, and the Kenya Defense Forces. As you reflect, this Constitution is telling you that the Inspector General of the police cannot be directed by any person in respect of inspection of any particular offense or offenses, in respect of the enforcement of the law against any particular person or persons, and C, employment, forget about it. Why I'm drawing your attention to this is that several members have proposed that we establish the likes of the anti-stock unit, we establish a parliamentary police force. This will fall in the High Court because the Constitution does not anticipate that we can form a parallel police force in this parliament. Yes, you can request in our standing orders that we allow, or rather, we request the Inspector General to deploy police officers here, but we cannot command them. That is the Constitution. So, to expect us to support you so that then we go and be embarrassed in court where we shall be reminded that we have no power to establish a parallel police force is asking for too much. Reflect on it. We are supporting you, but with due respect, you are walking a path that we shall not succeed. Madam Speaker, there is wisdom in this amendment where we want to enhance the pain through fines and what have you. That is a route we can pursue. But to pursue the possibility of us creating a police force, you're also saying that judges, upon being frustrated, should also establish a parallel police force for themselves. That is the kind of thing that this Constitution of ours does not anticipate. That if the president, for example, and his cabinet secretaries wanted a more efficient police force, they move away from the National Police Service and establish their own parallel police force. We would no longer be having a government that sits on the three legs of separation of powers. That is the contribution I wanted to give you with a lot of respect. With a lot of respect, because I have sat in that chair where you are today as chair for many, many years, both in this House and in the National Assembly, and I know the frustration you're going through. The Americans call it hyper focus. It's not enough just to focus, but to hyper focus. I support, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mogeni.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I begin by thanking the sponsor of this bill, Senator Ososi, for bringing what I perceive, and I beg to differ with Senator Halwale, what I perceive to be a very important amendment to the Powers and Privileges Act. Madam Speaker, every organization annually does audit its activities and look at its strengths, its weaknesses, what opportunities it has, and the threats it faces in executing its mandate. And Mr. Speaker, this proposed amendment to the Power and Privileges Bill is actually a response to the weaknesses and the threats we face as our House in enforcing the powers conferred on this House by Article 125 of the Constitution. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to plead, and I hope by the end of this debate, Senator Halwale will be persuaded that this bill does not contain any provision that we can deem to be unconstitutional. In fact, what it does, Madam Speaker, is to give teeth to the provisions of Article 125 of the Constitution. Because, Madam Speaker, you cannot have powers to someone but lack the mechanisms to enforce. That will be a weakness in itself. So if we were to, Madam Speaker, identify and analyze the weaknesses that we face as a body that is supposed to provide checks and balances, then clearly the fact that we cannot arrest to appear before us will emerge as a weakness. And we must do something, Madam Speaker, to respond, to fill that gap. Madam Speaker, if it can be of comfort to Senator Halwale, we had a debate like this when I served as the chair of Ethics and Anti-Corruption, Madam Speaker, because we had powers to conduct investigations, but we did not have powers to arrest, Madam Speaker. And we debated for a long time, looking for a solution. And finally, Madam Speaker, we made a conclusion that the best thing that will enhance the powers of EACC to summon a witness is to have a police station gazetted, and once you summon a witness, if he doesn't come, you go arrest, come and lock them up. And the Inspector General of Police gazetted Integrity Center as a police station. That does not fall under the security arms or the National Police Services we have read under the Constitution, but under Chapter 6, EACC, as a police station, gazetted by the Inspector General of Police. And they can summon you if you don't appear, they can come for you and lock you up at EACC. So, Madam Speaker, this bill responds to an initiative by this House to ensure that when we truly want to conduct an investigation, if we want to effect the powers that we have that have been conferred upon us by Article 125, then we must run the full course, Madam Speaker. And I want to remind Senator Halwale that even the institution you have cited, called the High Court, that other arm, that other independent arm, has powers to send its officers to pick you up and present you before the courts. If you are failing a civil debt and the court's order for you to be arrested for a civil debt. Court bailiffs can pick you up, take you before the courts for sentencing for a civil debt without the involvement of police officers. Court bailiffs have those powers. So I believe, Madam Speaker, when you read the proposed amendment to this bill, especially, I hope I'm reading section 3, subsection 4, it says that an order of arrest may be effected either by a police officer or by an authorized officer of a House of Parliament. So if you compare the exercise of those powers between the courts and us, there is nothing unconstitutional. If you read the Constitution, the chapter dealing with National Police Service, Part 4, from Article 243 all through, I believe there is a saving clause, there is a saving article, which allows Parliament to establish other police services. So we can have under Article 247, which says Parliament may enact a legislation establishing other police services, provided it's under the supervision of the National Police Service. So we can have a force that is called Parliamentary Police Service under the employment of the Parliamentary Service Commission, but under the supervision of the National Police Service. Mr. Speaker, we should also borrow from other jurisdictions. The U.S. Senate has powers to summon witnesses. They call it the subpoena powers. But the consequences are dire, Senator Halwale. If you don't respond or adhere to the summons issued by the Senate of the United States of America, you will face dire consequences. In fact, Madam Speaker, the fine, if you convert to the Kenyan, using the Kenyan exchange, the shilling to the dollar, the fine for the U.S. Senate is $100,000 US. That's equivalent to 15 million. What we are proposing here is 2 million. Then, if you don't comply, the Senate has even what they call criminal contempt power of Congress. If you don't respond, they can convict you and they can sentence you to a maximum of 12 months. Not less than 4, not more than 12. If you remember, in 1982, there was a lady who was serving under Ronald Reagan. I think she was called Ann Gorsuch. She was under the Environmental Authority under Reagan. She was summoned to appear before Congress to produce certain documents. She declined. But when she was pushed further, and when she faced the criminal contempt proceedings of Senate, she not only produced the documents, but she opted to resign. She quit. The case of Nixon, Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was required to produce some tapes that were in the custody of White House, and he refused. In fact, he filed a reference to the Supreme Court, citing presidential privilege. But the Supreme Court of America sided with the Senate and ordered him to produce the document. So, Madam Speaker, if we have to elevate the stature and the powers of this House, Madam Speaker, we must enhance the punishment not only to give a fine, but to also have power to convict. We can learn from other jurisdictions. Just last year, if you follow international news, an officer that was serving under former President, I believe Trump, was he called Cannon? I think that, yes, Cannon, was convicted by a Senate and sentenced to 4 months just for failure to appear before the Senate. So, Madam Speaker, if we really need to have a House that can fully hold other government institutions to account, then we should support this bill. And as I've said, Article 247 gives us, legislative power, to create another police service, which we can name Parliamentary Police Service, Madam Speaker. So I fully thank Senator Ososi for originating this bill. And this will be a game changer, Madam Speaker. Even current, Madam Speaker, we are going through the budget policy statement. And if you look at the columns there, the government is asking us, what were your objectives? What did you want to attain as a Senate? And you will say there, you know, we wanted, in response to maybe statements or in furtherance of our powers to hold government accountable, we wanted to summon this number of PSS, ministers. But you will see there is a gap, you know. And as we ask for more money, Treasury is asking, why didn't you attain these goals? How come you intended to have about 20 cabinet ministers appear before you, but it seems only 14? Because we give a projection at the beginning that we intend, in furtherance of our mandate, to summon this number of ministers or cabinet secretaries, so to speak. If you don't, Madam Speaker, it appears in the budget policy statement, and you must defend. So this gives us a very good case, Madam Speaker, to advance, you know, the reasons behind this bill. Let me give you an example, Madam Speaker. When you were sitting as NADCO, and the NADCO had appointees of the president, including the majority leader from National Assembly and the majority leader from Senate, Madam Speaker, we issued summons to the 7 former commissioners of IBC to appear before NADCO, Madam Speaker. 4 responded, appeared. Madam Speaker, the former chairman and the 2 commissioners wrote a letter, a contemptuous letter, in response to the summons, and said he will not appear. And we were helpless. But look at the important task that was before that committee, appointed with the approval of the president and with the leader of official opposition. If we have these amendments in place, Madam Speaker, nobody will ever take this house for granted. Not just this house, even the National Assembly. Nobody will ever take us for granted, Madam Speaker. And if it's of any comfort, these powers that are enjoyed by the Senate of the United States of America are not in the American Constitution. They are not in the American Constitution, just in their standing orders. But they have been tested before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has agreed with the importance of Congress having powers to issue subpoena and to punish if you don't appear. So I want to request Senator Ososi to wait for my amendment, Madam Speaker, that will be proposing that other than enhancing this fine to 2 million, we also have power to punish those who willfully refuse to appear before us. That is the only way, Madam Speaker, we can now talk of a house that has powers to oversight the executive and to provide checks and balances, and that can protect devolution. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, Madam Speaker, I want us to acknowledge the fact that what Article 125 gave us was just a blanket power to summon. How we ensure that that article is meaningful to us, gives Senate the necessary powers, is by enacting the necessary legislation that makes sure that Article 125 of our Constitution has teeth. So I support this bill, and I propose that we have a bipartisan approach. We look at the interest of the entire House, and not to be confined to the fact that this is a bill that has been sponsored by Senator Ososi, who is from the minority side. I plead with my colleague senators that we give this a bipartisan approach, and I assure you, Senator Halwale, many generations that will come after us will remember the Third Senate as the one that really enhanced the authority and the power of this House. With those remarks, Madam Speaker, I fully support. Thank you.
Senator Mungatana.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to also make my contributions in this bill. May I start by acknowledging the work that fellow colleague, neighbor, the Honorable Otsosi has put into this, and the thinking that is beyond doubt very clear, and the intention. It is good, and I want to start by saying I support it. Madam Speaker, when we were serving together in the Shakahola committee, we gave summons to the appearance of the main suspect, who was one Mackenzie, to appear before us. Madam Speaker, we were running against time. And so we issued summons directly. Madam Speaker, I want to demonstrate that sometimes police can be very difficult and fail to assist the processes of Parliament. Because when we served the Inspector General of Police to tell him to produce the person who went to effect service from Parliament, the process server, met some difficulties. And in the first instance, Madam Speaker, even the prisons officer, the Inspector General of Police, of prisons, was Director General of Prisons, was very difficult. Then on the second day, when we sat down, now we said that the person, the officer in charge of the prison, Shimolatewa prison, will be personally liable. If this person doesn't appear, there was a change, because now people realized it is person. In fact, we said it is not the Director General of Prisons, it is that person. So what the officer did, he now made access possible for the process server from Parliament to effect service on Mackenzie. The only difficulty that came now was the time schedule, because the lawyers needed more time and so on. But Madam Speaker, if we had gone through the whole process, through the Director General of Prisons in Nairobi, I don't know what, it would not have worked. Now, I am saying that committees in this House, Madam Speaker, and has been demonstrated in various arguments here, we have a difficulty in affecting the attendance of witnesses to our committees. And so, the thinking behind this amendment, Madam Speaker, I fully support it, and we must enhance the powers. And Madam Speaker, we need to do two things, which my honorable colleague Ososi has captured. We need to fine these people, and we need to attempt to effect arrest. Madam Speaker, when we talk about fining, the enhancement to 2 million is not sufficient. Madam Speaker, I would propose, and I know the figure has been given here, a figure of 5 million, but I know that if we made it to 10 million, we say just up to 10 million, so the committee can decide what is reasonable in between. If we say up to 10 million, Madam Speaker, it will enhance the seriousness of this matter. Madam Speaker, I remember when we fined the Dr. Johansen, only 500,000, he appeared and explained that it was not me. I didn't refuse to come to the committee. It was my minister who told me not to come. And Madam Speaker, we were able to then, having listened to his plea and, having been a very, very cooperative person all along, we decided to lift that. But, Madam Speaker, I'm trying to drive at one point. I'm saying the amendment must be clear, not just to enhance the fine, but it has to be very clear that it is personal to the witness, so that the gravity of the thing, of the whole process is captured. Why I say so is because the amendment that is proposed in this bill says that the fine is a civil debt recoverable under summary procedure. That's what Honorable Sosi has said. And I think the sponsor of the bill needs to look at it afresh so that it is specific to the witness and it's not recoverable as a civil debt, just open like that, but recoverable from that particular witness as a debt. So that if it's a government officer, it should go even further to give power. And I hope Honorable Sosi will capture this, or if it comes at the third stage, we work with him to make it such that there is direct power ordered to attach the salaries and benefits of any officer who has been found guilty of failing to follow the instructions of the committee or of the House. So that, Madam Speaker, if we are talking about a governor and a fine of 10 million has been put, a fine of 5 million, a fine of whatever amount has been put, then there should be another provision that allows the attachment of the salary, and it should be within a certain period of time so that the gravity of this issue is captured. So on the question of fine, I think, Madam Speaker, there could be deeper thought around that whole thing so that we enhance the powers of this Senate and of the National Assembly in this act. So I fully agree with those proposals, but maybe we can enrich it. When we sit down with the Honorable Senator, we can enrich it so that we think the whole process should be such that there are no loopholes, there are no legal loopholes to allow for escape of a person who refuses to honor the summons of this House. Madam Speaker, on the question of arrest, there are two forms of arrest, and they are provided for by the Criminal Procedure Code, Cap 75 of the laws of Kenya, and the Police Act, Section 58 of the Police Act. Madam Speaker, we must agree that the powers of arrest under our Constitution are mainly powers of police. So every time we are making proposals around the powers of arrest, the police must be involved. And Madam Speaker, there is provision in the Criminal Procedure Code, Act 75 of the laws of Kenya, that allows a private citizen to effect arrest. But what does he do with that arrest? Madam Speaker, the law itself says as soon as you arrest that person, you hand him over to the police. So again, it emphasizes the powers of arrest are within the police service. So, Madam Speaker, again, we need to put some deeper thought. My classmate and colleague, the Honorable Senator for Nyamira, he said that even court bailiffs can arrest you after a process of civil litigation. Correct. But the practicality of it, the court bailiff never goes to arrest a civil debtor without going to the police station nearby there. In fact, as a matter of fact, they always carry a police person, because the police are the only ones who are allowed to carry with them guns. So if you're going to arrest a civil debtor and you find he's an armed person and you are a court bailiff without any form of arms, how will you effect the arrest? And Madam Speaker, we are talking about important government figures who are always guarded by security personnel. How do you send a person from Parliament to just go and arrest a person who is guarded by 5 or 6 administration police officers. So I think we need to give it a lot more thought how we are going to affect this arrest. And one proposal that I think makes sense is the one that Honorable Senator Mogeni has said, that maybe we could have a gazetted police station within the parliamentary precincts, but again, it should be subject to the direction of the Inspector General of Police. It cannot be by the Speaker, it cannot be under the direction of the clerk, it cannot be. We cannot set up a separate force. Madam Speaker, when you look at Article 40, it sets up the National Security Council in Kenya. And Article 40 has listed all the big guys in security. And Parliament does not feature there. None of the speakers sit there, Madam Speaker. It will not be possible for us to establish this as an independent force or service outside the direction of the Inspector General of Police. So, Madam Speaker, I'm encouraging my colleague to think about this a bit more, because, Madam Speaker, it is possible to administratively engage with the Inspector General of Police to have a dedicated unit for Parliament, but under the direction of the Inspector General. And, Madam Speaker, even the diplomatic service, they have a unit that is dedicated to them, but under the direction of the Inspector General of Police. We must be careful when we come to issues that deal with arrest, the freedoms of citizens who are involved as accused persons and everything. We need trained people, and police, they go to school for this work. Not even the army, but the police officers. That's why they are given the powers of arrest. Now, if we say we are going to set up our own here, I have doubts about how we will do it. But administratively, I believe, Madam Speaker, it is possible to have a dedicated unit that will actually be used by this Parliament and parliamentary committees, both National Assembly and Senate, to effect process so that we make our work more effective. So, Madam Speaker, I believe that if we can have the fines properly enhanced and a proper process set out so clear that there are no legal loopholes, then we are making progress. And also, if we can have, either we go the way Senator Mogeni has proposed, that we gazette a police station here, or we administratively discuss with the IG in a formal way the issues we are raising here, and a justification for us to get our summonses and our warrants of arrest effected without delay within the Republic of Kenya, then we are making a practical suggestion. But, Madam Speaker, to say that we are taking on independent police powers upon ourselves, I think we are going into a gray area there, and it will end up, bringing issues about how do we command that, how the command issues of policing, and whether it is in fact within the Constitution. So, Madam Speaker, I think the safer way is for Parliament as an institution to engage so that our summonses, our directions, our invitations, our arrest warrants, if we are given those powers like it is for the High Court, are effected. There's a dedicated desk, a dedicated unit, so that we don't have delays. Madam Speaker, if we go that way, I think this bill is going to see the light of day faster, and it is something that we can do without much delay. But if we go the way of establishing an independent parliamentary police service, I think we are going into a very gray area, and we will meet a lot of resistance. And most likely, Mr. Speaker, we might end up in the Constitutional Court again, after we have done all this work, and then it's not what we want to do. So I fully support the thinking and the intentions behind this, but we need to do some more work so that we can produce well thought out legislation that will not have encumbrances going forward. I want to thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to address you. Thank you.
Senator Sigei.
I thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity that you've given me as well to contribute to this very important legislative proposal by Senator Osotsi. And I would like to commend the Honorable Senator for such an important proposal in terms of ensuring this House mandate is fully enforced at all levels, not only when we're in the floor of the House, but also to those who are supposed to implement or act on certain resolutions that come from this House. Madam Speaker, we have been taken through the provisions of Article 125 of the Constitution and Article 153 of the Constitution. And Madam Speaker, allow me to read what Article 153.3 says. It provides that a Cabinet Secretary shall attend before a committee of the National Assembly or the Senate when required by the committee and answer any question concerning a matter for which the Cabinet Secretary is responsible. So, Madam Speaker, the Constitution, which is the supreme law of this country, has given this House the mandate. I don't see any provision in this proposal that would be deemed unconstitutional. And therefore, when we seek to provide a mechanism within which we can implement the mandate of this House, nobody under the same law will deem it unconstitutional, because what this legislation is seeking to provide for is how do we enforce and implement the provisions of Article 153 that requires the Honorable Cabinet Secretaries and other state officers in commissions to appear before the committees of this House and answer to concerns the way they are required to file their annual reports as and when Parliament requires them to do. So Honorable Sotsi has had a thought through this process, and I believe in panel beating a bit of the provisions that this particular legislation provides, we shall come up with a legislation that will enhance and support this House in implementing its mandate as provided for by the Constitution. Madam Speaker, under the provisions of Section 18 that is seeking to amend by introducing timelines for purposes of allowing the clerk of this House to process summons, the period of 7 days is, in my opinion, sufficient enough to facilitate preparation and submission of this by the clerk. This timeline is in itself critical for purposes of ensuring that fair hearing is accorded to whoever is summoned. Similarly, the proposal under Section 18.5a and Section 18.5b, 18.5a provides for 7 days for the person who's been summoned to appear. And 5b, this is the one with which the Honorable Senator Chergat said can be amended, and I wish he was in the House, because the proposal grants the House or the committee, in this case, time shorter than the 7-day period where there is need for immediate appearance by such a person who has been summoned. This, Madam Speaker, is accommodating the concerns where there are incidences where we will need a Cabinet Secretary to appear before 7-day period lapses as provided for by the proposed subsection 5A under Section 18. And I support that provision because of two things. One, it gives the House or the committee sufficient time to process whatever they require to be responded to, and also the clerk to ensure that that is properly availed to the person who's been summoned. And two, it gives the opportunity to the person who's been summoned to prepare so that questions as regards fair hearing as provided for by Article 50 is provided for and is also protected, so that the person who is being summoned is given time to prepare, to process, and also to protect their rights if there will be such an infringement. Madam Speaker, under the proposed amendment to Section 19, Section 19 is where there is a proposal to amend the fine payable from Kenya shillings 500,000 to Kenya shillings 2 million. I support this proposition, Madam Speaker, for two reasons. One, the reason as to why there are certain reluctant persons once they are summoned to appear is because, as we've been told, in some committees, they have been asking, we would like to have your pay bill because it is so much small amount of money that they can as well just pay and avoid appearing. Enhancing this amount will definitely be punitive enough to ensure that 2 million is something that cannot just be paid as pocket change. Secondly, it will also act as a deterrent, because the more you are asked to pay such an amount of money, especially where the law provides that that should be out of personal resources, this will deter them and it will enhance their desire to appear before the committee and respond to the issues. I therefore, Madam Speaker, support the proposal to ensure that this amount is enhanced from Kenya shillings 500,000 to 2 million Kenya shillings. Madam Speaker, the proposal under Section 19C 2A, where this amount of fine that has been enhanced is to be recovered as a civil debt, I wish the Honorable Senator Otsotsi would now provide, because when you look at the act he's made reference to, Debt Summary Recovery Act, it requires that before the same is enforced, a complaint is lodged. So you may consider to enhance, or rather to amend that particular subsection to ensure that the person who will be lodging a complaint is either the clerk of the House, so that, or any particular person, so that it becomes recoverable as a civil debt. That is the provision you've made under subsection C of Section 19 of Section 19 of this proposal. And lastly, under the proposed Section 27, the amendment to enhance Kenya shillings 200 as fine for the conduct specific before the committee or the House from 200,000 to 2 million will similarly act as a deterrent and as, at the same time, ensure that every other person who is summoned is capable of being made to feel the pain of inability to appear or refusing to appear, by making sure that that particular contempt is punished by the committee, and the law will protect the role, the function, and the mandate of this House. To the extent that those proposals are geared towards enhancing this House from performing its function, I fully support, subject to those few amendments, which I know the Honorable Sotsi will definitely consider in order to make sure that the bill gets full support and is passed by the whole House. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Dulo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand to support this amendment. And I wish to congratulate Senator a lot of issues that I really wanted to bring up has been proposed, or rather mentioned also, by my colleagues, which I don't want to go over them. Madam Speaker, on the issues of IG, I remember we had 2 instances where 2 governors were supposed to be arrested. But unfortunately, IG failed this House. And as a House, we must have a fallback in the event that IG refuses to arrest the witnesses. Mr. Speaker, The other issue I wanted to mention is that most of the time you will see that witnesses actually writing very vague letters the last hour to appearance before the committee, just to excuse themselves from appearing before the committee. And I think that has to be looked into it critically. Because I remember last session, there was a governor who said he was out of the country on official duty. The same day he is supposed to appear before a certain committee, a sit-in, he was actually giving a press statement somewhere else, which is actually disrespectful to this particular house. And I believe something needs to be done, Mr. Osotsi, to tighten up the evidence of failure to appear before the committee. It should not be flimsy grounds. It should be proper evidence that is justifiable. Secondly, I know Article 125 concerns only committees of this House. And when we talk of privilege, powers and privilege, I think this is not powers and privileges for this House. This particular legislation facilitates senators to carry out their responsibilities. Mr. Speaker, we have managed to be given an allocation to carry out our oversight role. And I want us to move to the next step. If Mr. Osotsi can be able to look into that, or one of us can bring an amendment. Mr. Speaker, if I may give an example of my county.
Senator Dulo, I wanted to notify you that the Speaker had earlier on appointed 5 o'clock to discuss a matter of national importance, but in the circumstances, I'll give you 2 minutes to conclude on your comments on this particular bill. Then we will adjourn to discuss the matter that had been approved pursuant to Standing Order 37.
Kindly give me 3 minutes, Mr. Speaker, just to conclude. Mr. Speaker, if I may give an example of my county, I had written to Governor Isiolo County to give me certain documents to carry out my oversight role. But unfortunately, he refused and he went into the public. If you may allow me, I can even play the clip where he said he can only be audited by the public who have elected him. Nobody else can audit him. He went ahead and he even warned, or rather stopped, civil societies that were actually having a meeting with me, because I realized there was double allocation of budget from both county government and also NGOs. And I wanted actually to get that information and to tell them the reason why senators are carrying out oversight. The county secretary and the governor called the civil societies not to appear for my meeting. There is a clip I have where he said, even if he's called by Senate 500 times, he will choose when to appear, when not to appear. I have a clip if I was allowed to play here. So what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, can we have an extension, or rather an amendment, or even a regulation where we should be allowed as individual senators within the counties to be given powers to get documents and evidences to be able to carry out our oversight role, because that is very critical. We actually inspect projects that are within our counties. Sometimes we would want to talk to the contractors. They might be told, don't provide the document. We might go to those offices and we ask for documents, especially county governments where governors are hostile to the senators. We don't get those documents. So I'm appealing to Senator Osotsi or even the House or whoever member is ready to move that amendment, even if it doesn't come to the bill because it touches both houses, we can have a regulation that allows senators to be able to carry out their mandates. Mr. Speaker, I think I will finalize by saying that I will support the proposal by Senator Mungatana as far as the fine is concerned. Because for county government, 2 million is nothing. Let them feel the pinch. And we need to dehone these governors who think they are gods in those counties. I believe if we carry out this particular amendment, we will have a respect as a house, because it looks like in those counties, senators are not actually respected for anything. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Dulo. Honorable members, as I had earlier on indicated, the Speaker earlier in the morning session had confirmed that the requisite threshold was made to have this House adjourn to discuss a matter of national importance. I therefore rise that pursuant to Standing Order 37, the Senate do now adjourn to discuss a definite matter of urgent national importance, namely the increased femicide cases recently witnessed in the country. I call upon Senator Asige to proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 37, asking the Senate do now adjourn to discuss a definite matter of national importance, namely the increased femicide cases recently witnessed in the country. I wish to begin by repeating a statement I made in January, because this matter has not become any better, and in fact, there is a section of men that have become even more emboldened and seemingly attacking women for sheer sport. I want to condemn in the strongest term possible the callous, barbaric, and methodical execution of young defenseless women at the hands of their intimate partners and husbands, which have almost become commonplace. Yet the correct term has yet to capture our lexicon. Femicide is a deep-rooted hate crime that strikes at the very heart of our commitment to justice, equality, fundamental human rights, and must be called out in no uncertain terms for what it is: a national emergency. With Back-to-Back's report in January alone bringing to light at least 17 femicide cases by way of violent stabbings, strangulation, and mutilation, I never could have imagined that being a woman in Kenya would become a matter of life and death. This war waged against women contravenes Article 29C of the Constitution and is an existential threat that has gone on for far too long. Today is Valentine's Day, a time to celebrate love, romance, and relationships. But this year, in the wake of hate crimes and brutal killings of women, we have seen love sharply overshadowed by fear, violence, and death in Kenya. Red used to signify love, but has now turned into blood, Mr. Speaker. Why is it that as women, our love and femininity is adorned and sought after by men, yet persecuted and oppressed in equal measure by the very same men? It can't be ignored that this thing that we seek, this love, indeed has a dark side. And this year I stand in solidarity with all victims of femicide by calling women across the country to wear black instead of red. Moving this motion to discuss the increased femicide cases, and hosting a vigil concert at the University of Nairobi this evening, which I invite everyone to attend, because this is a dark Valentine's. Mr. Speaker, for all its popularity, The origins of Valentine's Day are unclear. It is said to have stemmed from an ancient pagan festival where offering animal sacrifices and whipping women with the dirty and bloody skins of those animals to awaken their fertility was the focus of the ritual. This was called Lupercalia. In the 5th century, that bloody tradition was quickly cleaned up by the Roman Church and named Saint Valentine's Day after a priest named Father Valentine. I find that more than ironic that the origins of this day is shrouded in violence against women, and centuries later on, this day, this reality has not changed a bit. We are still battling systematic hate crimes against women. Mr. Speaker, let us be very intentional and set the record straight that GBV takes many forms, including sexual GBV, domestic GBV, and emotional gender-based violence. Unfortunately, the statistics are frightening. Mr. Speaker, reports found that over 40% of women in Kenya experience intimate partner violence. In 2020 alone, the Ministry of Public Service and Gender it had recorded 5,009 cases through their national helpline. Further, in the first 2 weeks of the COVID pandemic, Health Assistance Kenya recorded a 300% increase in calls made to their hotline to report cases of violence against women, because we were stuck in an indefinite lockdown with our perpetrators, and one can only guess how many went unreported. Between January 2016 and December 2023, Mr. Speaker, Kenya witnessed over 500 cases of femicide with intimate partners, including femicide against women with disabilities. Close to 2/3 of the perpetrators were either currently or had previously been in an intimate relationship with the victim, with husbands and boyfriends being the most common culprits. Data analysis reveals that women aged 18 to 40 comprise the largest demographic of femicide victims in Kenya. Additionally, Speaker, in last year's UN General Assembly, reports put cases of GBV in Kenya amongst the highest in the world. Not a very good thing to be rated or ranked first at, Mr. Speaker. Throughout January and February, the nation has been seized by case after case of brutal murders of women under different scenarios, right off the heels of at least 10 cases of femicide reported in 2023. This is an alarming and distressing trend that shows the ugly underbelly of our nation and underscores the dangers that women face every single day. Even more alarming is the fact that recent events are neither novel nor isolated. We still remember the deaths of Ivy Wangeshi, a medical student who was hacked to death in broad daylight. Sharon Otieno, the young mother and student who was gang raped and then stabbed while 7 months pregnant. Elizabeth Ekaru, a head of state commendation recipient for her exemplary work as a human rights defender, who was attending a burial when she was lured away by a man who stabbed her severally to death. Agnes Tirop, a world recording holding athlete who was murdered by her husband only a few days after she turned 26-year-old by her husband. Agnes Wanjiru, a young lady murdered by British soldiers from the British Army Training Unit Kenya, Batuk, in Nanyuki, whose leaked WhatsApp group is alleged to show them further mocking their death. These women are only representative of countless women who have lost their lives, Mr. Speaker, to violence by men over the years, right under our noses. The trend is that these cases capture the imagination of the nation for a few days, then slowly fade away, with most perpetrators not being apprehended, charged, or prosecuted at all. The legal processes found that once a perpetrator has been arrested and brought to court, it takes an average of 1,900 days for a case to be concluded and the suspect to be sentenced. That's over 5 years. And that does not encompass cases that involves appeals, Mr. Speaker, which of course extends the duration even further. Mr. Speaker, this trend is incompatible with commitments made by government in 2021 as part of the GBV Action Coalition of the Generation Equality Initiative. Under this initiative, Kenya made strong commitments, key of which was to end GBV in Kenya by 2026. Other commitments included adding GBV medical, legal, and psychological support services into the essential minimum package of the UHC coverage by 2022, establishing a GBV Survivors Fund, establishing GBV recovery and survivors shelters in every single county, scaling up the National Police Service response times and investigations into GBV, developing a GBV management and information system by 2022, and full implementation of GBV laws and policies by adopting a GBV indicator in the government performance contracting framework. It goes without saying, Mr. Speaker, that the government is lagging desperately behind on these commitments, creating an ever-worsening narrative that says government doesn't care about the lives of women in Kenya. So men, kindly carry on killing. That's the narrative that is capturing the nation's women, Mr. Speaker. The time for complacency is over, and we must unite in our efforts to eradicate this pervasive issue. I urge the executive to prioritize strict enforcement of our existing laws that unequivocally condemn these murders, bringing perpetrators to book for this capital offense. Additionally, Speaker, I call upon the police to strengthen their response mechanisms and to ramp up training to officers who handle femicide cases. To the public, Mr. Speaker, we must reject violence in all its forms. Murder is murder is murder, and what we have witnessed is unjustifiable. We can't stand idly by while our mothers, our sisters, and our daughters lay dead in a pool of their own blood. Because, Mr. Speaker, the price of our silence is paid with the lives of these women. I beg to move, Mr. Speaker, and I call upon Senator Miraj Abdullahi to kindly second. I thank you.
Senator Miraj.
She's not in.
Senator Miraj is not in the House.
Thank you, Speaker. Instead, I'll call upon Senator Gloria Orwoba to second.
Senator Gloria, before you proceed to second the motion, Standing Order 37-6. Senator Gloria, before you take the mic, Standing Order 37-6 provides that no senator speaking on a matter that is standing order shall speak for more than 5 minutes. So make sure you second and limit your contributions to 5 minutes. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to second Senator Crystal Asige's motion that is actually coming in very late, Mr. Speaker. This is something that we have been meaning to discuss as women who have been put in this house to represent women and safeguard the lives of women out there. And it was just unfortunate that we were in recess. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I know that it seems that we are just coming here to discuss and debate and talk. But Mr. Speaker, what we are doing here is very, very important to begin to shape the narrative of the mindsets of those who think that it is okay to perpetrate and encourage for our young
boys and men out there to continue killing the women and girls of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, while the debate might not be an actual immediate impact, Mr. Speaker, we need to start talking about what needs to be done, because we haven't even gotten to a place where we are talking about the things that we need to do as a society, Mr. Speaker. And I believe that that conversation needs to start here in Parliament, being led by legislators who have been put in this space to ensure that we represent the women and the girls of this country. Mr. Speaker, just before this debate started, a couple of my colleague senators, men, were saying that Sasa tunaenda, we are going to discuss issues of women, Mr. Speaker. And I said, no, we are not going to discuss issues of women. We are going to discuss issues of livelihoods, of lives of Kenyans. Because women, just like men, are citizens of this country with equal rights. So it's not just issues of women. Each and every life that we have lost, Mr. Speaker, because of femicide, is equivalent to a life that we lose because of war, because of floods, because of natural... It's a life lost is a life lost. It cannot be brought down to that is a life lost because of femicide, because of Airbnb, Mr. Speaker. So those are the things that we need to change, starting from this house, that it's not discussing issues of women. It's discussing issues of national importance, Mr. Speaker. I want to say that, and I've said this before on different platforms, even as I second this, this motion. Every time that we stand up to talk about the gender agenda, the first thing that is assumed is that it is the women again coming to force us to give them things. It is the women again coming to tell us that now we must stop thinking about the boys and stop thinking about the men and just support the girl child. Mr. Speaker, I urge my fellow senators to remember that these women and girls are your sisters, are your children, potentially your future wives, business partners, because we are also doing business and contributing to this economy, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, when we are here to discuss matters on how to end femicide, Mr. Speaker, it's not an issue of a women affair. It is an issue of ensuring that every Kenyan, man or woman, is equally respected, Mr. Speaker. As I second this motion, and I can see I'm running out of time, I want to say that I am looking forward to an amendment that touches on the police force, particularly the gender desks, Mr. Speaker, to make them effective. And as we debate today, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge my fellow senators to remember that we are not attacking men and we are not attacking boys, but we are trying to address an issue that is targeted towards our women and our girls, and that has to be spoken about, and particularly in this house. So I beg to second this motion, and thank you, Senator Crystal Asige, for ensuring that we are intentional about discussing this matter, and I hope that we will be able to legislate on issues of GBV. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that pursuant to Standing Order 37, the Senate do adjourn to discuss a definite matter of urgent national importance, namely the increased femicide cases recently witnessed in the country. Members, I will open up this debate, and as Valiaron directed, we will allow as many of you as are willing to speak to, but limited to 5 minutes each for every member who seeks to debate. I'm seeing from my dashboard, everyone else in the House has requested to speak to it. We will work within the time that is available, and I will call upon Senator Mutinda Tabitha Maureen to check the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let me start by saying that it's a very dark Valentine for most of the women parliamentarians. This is because it's a day that we celebrate love, but the same love has brought darkness in terms of death. Before I proceed, I want to appreciate our male Senate colleagues, starting with Senator Maanzo, Senator Wakoli, and our good senator from Nandi, great senator from Embu, Senator Mondigi, and for appreciating us as women, for standing with us on this femicide discussion. Not forgetting you, Mr. Speaker, being on the seat on this discussion that we as female Senate legislators thought when we requested for this session that we will have our male counterparts in the House. But it gets more darker because the issue looks like a women issue only. We need you. You need us. We need to have this conversation together. We cannot achieve the menace of femicide without the men. I appreciate the sergeant-at-arms male in the House. I do. They are our brothers. We work together, we are colleagues. This discussion of femicide has been misinterpreted. It is not wrong to love. It's your choice. It's not criminal to decide whom you want to share your life with. There's no problem. The problem that we are addressing as legislators is the saddening part that our girls innocently will get into mutual relations, and as a parent it pains to the core when then you bury your young one simply because she was in the normal path of puberty, normal process that we all go through, and then someone decides to end their destiny. It is dark. It's a dark Valentine. As we've said, and as I look at the Article 43 of the Constitution, which says very clearly that everyone has equal right to the different facilities, from education, from social, economic, health, all that, equally to the freedom of choice of the one you choose. There's no law that is against that. It's your choice. Citizens have questioned Parliament and asked, where have you been? But I want to state that the law is very clear. The law is very clear. Nobody is above the law, especially when it comes to matters of killings. And so I narrow it to the security forces. Security forces who seem not to have handled these issues fairly. Just last month, in January, when we lost the young girl, and Matara was mentioned to be the killer, young women came out, and I am so proud of them, because was it not for their decision to come out and tell their stories, we would not have known a lot that we know. But they came out, but it saddens that they reported these issues and nothing was done. In a nutshell, I want to say our brothers. The boy child, the future, we urge you that let us be able to respect one another, be able to share what God said, that we share the love that has also been mentioned in the Bible.
Senator Mutinda, your time is up. Senator Manzo Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to speak on this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, the last of the worst cases of this offense happened to Agao from Makueni County. And it was such a sad affair, Mr. Speaker, because the head went missing for some days. And this was a university student, and you would imagine what it meant for the family and the people who knew this, with parents struggling to look for, ahead of somebody so that they may have a decent funeral. Although the funeral ended up to be a private affair, this matter was in the news for quite some days, and every Kenyan was very much saddened by that particular discourse. Mr. Speaker, as much as we want to blame the security, which can be done so rightfully, I also want to thank them for the effort made in this particular case, especially in finding the head. In the latest of cases of a Kenyan killed in the US by a fellow Kenyan, again also from my county, and then this Kenyan comes to Kenya, escapes from police, disappears. I also want to congratulate the effort to find this particular accused person who will be shipped to the US to stand trial. And I'm sure from the evidence available and from his conduct, he's likely to be sentenced to death or stay forever in jail. But I want to put a challenge, Mr. Speaker. In the event these particular activities happen, first and foremost, security comes in. In a lot of other cases also, poor evidence has been presented, and these persons have been acquitted, and they're out there ready to be a menace again yet to another life. I want to state that femicide can happen to a wife, can happen to a daughter, can happen to a friend, can happen to anybody. And in the same way also, that is femicide, also men get caught up in these situations, and a lot of men have also died in an affair of this nature. Mr. Speaker, we need to look at the law. We need to make sure there is clear protection of the law and there is sufficient punishment. But more important, this goes to the how we bring up our society, the morality in the society. Chapter 10 issues of this country. We need to begin training children from when they are young through role modeling by parents that violence against anyone is dangerous. When parents violate each other in front of children, children are likely to do worse when they grow up. And that's one way of beginning of addressing the root cause so that we deal with prevention, which is better than cure. Once alive, it's lost, and once somebody is dead, they're dead. They may not come back to life during our times. Mr. Speaker, as we address the social dynamics of it and the society in general, it doesn't only happen in Kenya, it's a matter in the world. It is motivated, first of all, by malice, hate of somebody who has been very close to you, lack of patience, lack of perseverance, and most of it is training of how that child has been brought up. Because if you bring up a child in the right way, they are going to turn right in future, and this happens through modeling, role modeling. And again also, when we have publicity and we have laws in the country which are strong enough to prevent these sort of actions. Mr. Speaker, I support and want to say that after this motion, we should take it upon ourselves with the leadership of Senator Asige, that we look at the law and strengthen it, and also use this house also to lobby against such violence as we make our debates when we have relevant debates, so that there can be sensitization into the country that such a thing is very bad, and those caught, then we should see the law taking action on them so that in future no one repeats it, and our children can stay safe. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Alexander Mundige.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa ruhusa nisangie mjadala wa Senator Asige. Mambo ya mauaji tumeyasikia kwa mara mingi, miaka mingi, siku nyingi, na watu wanafaa wajue Bwana Spika, mambo ya mauaji katika Biblia imekataliwa. Mambo ya mauaji tumesikia vijana, wasichana, wache, hata kwa kina mama, na imekuwa ikichangiwa mara mingi pia hata kwa boma zetu. Yangu ni kuomba tu, hii mambo tunafaa tuyakomeshe, kutengenezwe sheria kama ni mambo kama hiyo itafuatiliwa namna gani. Kwa sababu inapitia kwa sana, hata kwa vijana, na unakuta saa nyingine ni mambo ya kukosana juu ya vyama, ama juu ya pesa, ama juu ya mapenzi. Mimi ningeomba tu tuone ni dawa gani tunaweza tumia, ama ni itatumika hii mambo ikwame, kwa sababu unakuta hata kwa nyumba watu wakikosana kidogo, unakuta bibi na bwana wanapigana, wanauana. Kwa shule zetu ya sekondari na zile nyingine za juu, unakuta vita, kijana akikataliwa na msichana, ama msichana akikataa mambo ya kijana, unakuta wanapigana. Na pia imechangia upande ya vile tunakaa, mambo ya hela na uongo mingi. Kwa hiyo ningeomba watoto wetu wale mko shule, wa vijana na wasichana, mjue ni nani mnatembea na yeye. Kwa sababu unaweza kuwa unatembea na rafiki, lakini si rafiki, ni adui yako. Kwa hiyo ningeomba vile tunaweza kuangalia hii mambo hiyo haitafanyika tena. Inaweza kuwa hata saa nyingine kwa biashara, hata kwa mambo mingi, unakuta inaleta shinda. Na ninaomba vijana pia, hata kama msichana amekukataa, hakuna haja ya kumuua, kwa sababu kimuua utawekwa ndani. Wasichana, angalia ni nani mnakuwa rafiki na yeye. Unaweza kuwa naye uongo ni mingi. Kwa hiyo ningeomba aidha ni kijana ama ni msichana, kuonekane ni nini ndio watu waweze kwenda pamoja. Ya mwisho, Bwana Spika, pia serikali mpaka ingilie kwa watoto wetu wa shule, kwa sababu ya mambo ya pangi, dawa ya kulevya na mambo mengi. Kwa hiyo naomba hii mambo iangaliwe vizuri, ndio tusitake kusikia mambo ya mauaji tena, ndio Kenya yetu tuweze kuwa tunatembea pamoja. Kwa sababu katika Biblia hakuna mambo ya mwanamke ama mwanaume, sisi sote mbele ya Mwenyezi Mungu tuko kitu kimoja. Bwana Spika, mimi naunga mkono.
Senator Mudama Agnes Kabindu.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii nikaweze kuchangia kwa huu mjadala wa kudhulumiwa kwa wanawake na kuuawa kwa wanawake na watu kukosa haki yao. Nikiongea Bwana Spika, nina uchungu mwingi sana moyoni, kwa sababu Machakos County nimepoteza several ladies, ama wanawake, wamama kadhaa, wasichana na wamama, kupitia mauaji ya kiolela. Juzi tu tumempata Rita Waeni Mwendo, ni wa kutoka Machakos County. Aliwawa kinyama sana, akakatakatwa mguu unapatikana kule, sijui kichwa ilipatikana wapi. Na Bwana Spika, ni lazima pia wasichana wetu wajichunge wanaenda na kina nani, wawe wanajua wale watu wanatembea nao ni watu wa aina gani. Na mimi ningesema ile inachangia sana kwa wasichana wetu kwenda na kupata madhara ya aina hii, ni kwa sababu ya ukosefu wa ajira. Kwa maana wengi wamekosa kazi na wanatembea kiolelaolela kwa sababu ya shida na tabu na dhiki wanazozipitia. Na kwa hivyo ni lazima tuangalie wasichana wetu vizuri, tuweze kuwapatia makazi kama serikali,
ili wakaweze kuwa wanaweza kujidumu kimaisha, ili waache kuingia katika mipango kama hii. Na tumeona pia hata manyumbani wamama wakichinjwa kama mbuzi. Si kwamba tu ni wamama wanauawa peke yao, lakini zaidi wale wengi huwa ni wamama, huwa wanauawa kiolela, na unapata tu kwa sababu mtu ameona wivu anaenda anachinja mtu tu, na hakuna mtu ana ruhusa ya kutoa uhai wa mtu mwingine kiserikali na hata kiungu. Hakuna mtu ako na maisha ambayo anaweza kupatia mtu. Kwa hivyo naomba hata hatua kali sana iweze kufanyika kwa wasichana wetu ambao wameuliwa. Ninaomba pia serikali, kwa sababu serikali, juzi nilisema serikali iko na mkono mrefu sana, na serikali ikitaka kuarrest hao watu itawaarrest na iwapate na waweze kufungwa, ili iwe funzo kwa hao na kwa wengine wote. Na si mambo ya mauaji tu, utapata dhuluma za kiboma ni nyingi sana. Utapata mama yuko pale nyumbani, lakini zile dhuluma na shida na dhiki anazozipitia ni za ajabu, simply kwa sababu ni mwanamke. Utapata baba ako na ruhusa hata ya kuuza ng'ombe, lakini mama hana ruhusa ya kuuza hata kuku. Sasa pale inakuwa pia ni dhuluma zingine ambazo si nzuri sana. Na ningeomba Senator Sige, ukiangalia hii
Who is how Kenya ushered 2024. And Mr. Speaker, I am very grateful because these cases have highlighted the situation for all of us. Femicide Count Kenya is an organization, and it records that in 2023 only, we lost 152 women through death, through murder by people close to them or people posing as lovers. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, today, the women in this House, we are all dressed in black because it is a dark Valentine for us. Love is no longer what it's supposed to be for our girls. And if we do not take, as leaders, if we do not condemn these actions, not only condemn, but employ upon the relevant authorities
interventions. I call upon Senator Muma Moyeka Catherine to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on this very important issue. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed a dark Valentine. A dark Valentine because our society has decided that they will normalize the killings of girls and young women in this country. Mr. Speaker, the best evidence of the fact that it's a dark Valentine, that even as we notified our fellow senators in this House that we would be discussing this motion at 5, over 50 senators think this is a non-issue. They are not here to discuss it. Mr. Speaker, this actually is a reflection of how casual this country with some of them, they felt that this is a waste of time that should be spent discussing other bills. I want to mourn that fact and to go on record that it is deplorable that we can actually have this. Mr. Speaker, every year since 2016, we have had at least 40 girls murdered every year. Murdered because of their beauty, and somebody is jealous that they are living a relationship, murdered in domestic violence, murdered for organ trafficking, or whatever other reason. And they work on the vulnerability of the poverty within the nation to prey on our girls. Mr. Speaker, these acts are condoned because the systems in place do not do what they're supposed to do. And I want to call on the Cabinet Secretary for Internal Security, Professor Kindiki, who is a human rights practitioner, to actually rein in all his officers, up to the chiefs. Those are the ones who say, this is a domestic issue, let them negotiate, and then the next day somebody has been killed. We want to call upon the Cabinet Secretary in Education, Mr. Mashogu, stop denying access to sex education and skills education for girls and boys. That will help to reduce the problems that we have. We also want to call on the Cabinet Secretary, Madam Nahumicha, in health. Please deploy more money to supporting adolescents. Mr. Speaker, between 2016 and 2022, 2.3 million adolescents, children, were pregnant. That is young girls. You are a lawyer and you know, Mr. Speaker, all of those are cases of defilement, but they have not actually been brought to book. So even as we speak about those who have been killed, many livelihoods of many young girls are being killed because of sexual violence within the homes, sexual violence within the schools, sexual violence even within the church precincts that are actually turning and killing the livelihoods of our girls beyond killing the physical lives of many other girls. This is a serious issue, and we are calling on the President to stand up and pronounce himself on the issue of femicide, to actually set up a team under his office to immediately look into this issue. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Miraj.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kuweza kunipa fursa hii adhimu ili niweze kuchangia katika motion ya dadangu na niweze kuomboleza na taifa la Kenya kwa kuweza kupoteza watoto wetu wa kike, kina mama ambao wameoleka katika ndoa zao na wasichana wengine ambao pia wamepoteza maisha yao. Bwana Spika, 39% hadi 47% ya wanawake ulimwenguni wanaishi katika ndoa ambazo wananyanyaswa, na 70% ulimwenguni wanawake wamekuwa wakiuliwa kwa sababu tu wao ni wa jinsia ya kike. Na takwimu zinaashiria ya kuwa idadi kubwa ya wale ambao wametuacha kwa mauaji haya ya dhulma ni kwamba wameuliwa kwa sababu waliingia katika mahusiano na watu ambao waliwapenda tu kama wanawake, vile umbile letu Mwenyezi Mungu alitubariki tuweze kupeana mapenzi, lakini mwishole wamezulumika. Na mimi nazungumza hivi leo niongee na taifa la Kenya kama kiongozi wa kike katika hili bunge la Seneti. Niwaombe wazazi na niombe jamii isisukume watoto wa kike katika mahusiano. Kama mtoto wa kike hajakuwa tayari kuoleka, tuacheni tabia ya kila tunapokutana kama jamii kuwapa msukumo waingie katika mahusiano. Kwa sababu Bwana Spika, changamoto hii kubwa inawapata wale watoto wa kike ambao wamesoma, wamejiweka katika maisha vizuri, lakini imekuwa ni lazima watu wafate mkumbo. Bwana Spika, kufata mkumbo ni kwamba tumewekewa kiwango cha miaka ambacho tukikifikisha ni lazima sisi kama watoto wa kike, hata kama hatujapata kipenda roho, ni lazima tuonyeshe jamii kwamba tumeoleka. Bwana Spika, naomba leo kuzungumza na kina mama ambao wanaishi katika ndoa ambazo wananyanyaswa. Wasiogope kunyoshewa kidole cha lawama ati kwa sababu wamejikwamua katika yale mateso ambao wanaendelea kuyapata. Bwana Spika, sisi kama taifa tumelifanya jambo la kawaida mtoto wa kike anaporudi nyumbani kupeana malalamishi wa yale mambo ambao anapitia katika ndoa yake. Tunambebesha virago na kumwambia huyu ndo ulituletea, kwa hivyo nenda ukamalize safari na mwenzako. Tunaishi katika ulimwengu tofauti na wale ambao wazazi wetu waliishi. Bwana Spika, tunaishi katika ulimwengu ambao msongo wa mawazo unaumiza watu. Bwana Spika, tunaishi katika jamii ambayo mtoto wa kike amewezeshwa kiasi cha kwamba akiwa yeye ndiye mtafutaji katika jamii, mtoto wa kiume hataki kukubali kwamba huyu mtoto wa kike anaweza kwenda kazini na arudi awezeshe jamii yake. Langu Bwana Spika, kwa dada zangu wa kike wa umri wangu na wale ambao wamenizidi, ni waombe usilazimishe mahusiano ikiwa hauko tayari, wala usikubali kupelekwa na shengesha ya vile vitu ambavyo unaviona katika social media. Hakuna kitu kama perfect life, hakuna kitu kama perfect marriage, hakuna kitu kama perfect relationship. Ningewaomba mchukue muda wenu muafaka munapochagua mtu ambaye mtaendelea kuishi naye katika maisha yenu. Iwe ni mtu ambaye umempenda na uko tayari kufa kuzikana kukaa naye, na sio yeye akulazimishe kwenda Jongomeo na yeye akibaki nyuma kutafuta mrembo mwingine. Na washukuru viongozi wote wa kiume ambao wamebaki hapa ndani ili kuwezesha kupaza sauti za mtoto wa kike katika jamii hii. Sisi ni warembo, mtupende, tupendane, tuzae. Hiyo ndiyo sababu kubwa Mwenyezi Mungu alituletea hapa ulimwenguni. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Shakila.
Mahususi.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa hii nafasi na mimi pia kuchangia katika huu mswada muhimu sana wa kina mama. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza ningependa kuchukua fursa hii nimshukuru sana, niseme asante kwa Senator Mundigi leo kwa kukumbuka wamama ikiwa ni Valentine Day. Japokuwa sisi Waislamu hatusherekei Valentine, lakini tunasema naye kukumbuka ni binadamu. Kwa hivyo tunasema asante kwa Mheshimiwa Mundigi. Kitu chengine ningependa kusema Mheshimiwa Spika ni kwamba hakuna mwanamke ama binadamu anayestahili kufa kwa sababu ya mapenzi. Kifo kimepangiwa muda wake na sababu zake, lakini sababu ya mapenzi haistahili mtu kupoteza maisha yake. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mwanamke ama binadamu yoyote anayepoteza maisha, kitu cha muhimu ni haki ipatikane. Na haki kupatikana ni sharia zifuatwe. Mheshimiwa Spika, Kenya hatuna shida ya sharia. Sharia Kenya ziko nyingi sana ambazo kwamba zinampatia kila mtu haki kikamilifu. Lakini shida ni kwamba utekelezaji wa sharia ndio changamoto kubwa katika nchi yetu. Kwa hivyo dhuluma za kijinsia zinasababishwa na kukosa kutekelezwa kwa sharia zinazoambatana na hizo dhuluma. Mheshimiwa Spika, hatuko hapa leo kusema kwamba tulikuwa na shida hii, wamama hawa wameuawa, kupeana ripoti ama kupeana hisabu. Tuko hapa Mheshimiwa Spika kutaka suluhisho ya hii shida ambayo inazidi kuendelea na suluhisho halijapatikana. Mheshimiwa Spika, dhulma kama hizi zikifanyika, kwa mfano kama ni hoteli kama ile inafaa kwanza ifungwe. Hoteli kama ile inafaa polisi waende wachukue records za wale ambao kwamba walienda kubuku hiyo hoteli, wakaacha vitambulisho vyao na majina yao kamili. Ni rahisi sana watu kama hawa kushikwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, tunashindwa ni kwa nini serikali na sheria imezembea kukosa kupambana na magaidi kama hawa wanaoenda wakiua wasichana wenyewe na kuua wamama kiholela. Kwa sababu kama sheria ingechukuliwa, mahoteli haya yangekuwa yanafungwa na watu kuchukuliwa vibali vyao, kuchunguzwa na kusororwa kujulikana ni kina nani wauaji, bila shaka haya mambo yangekoma. Lakini kwa sababu sheria haitekelezwi, ndio unapata haya mambo yanazidi kuendelea na dhuluma hizi za kijinsia hazitakoma, kwa sababu unyanyasaji uko ndani, nje, juu na chini. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, haya yote yanaoletwa ni mambo yanachangiwa na wale ambao ni watekelezaji sheria na wale ambao wanafaa kuwajibika kuchukua hatua kwa mambo kama haya yakifanyika, wanaokosa kuwajibika kwa majukumu yao. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa, mimi ningependa sana kusisitiza kwamba sheria zichukuliwe na zitekelezwe kikamilifu ili haki ipatikane kwa wale wasichana ambao wameumia. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Gerard K. Samson.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Nataka niungane na wenzangu wa maseneta wamesema ya kwamba kuhusu hii hoja ya ambaye tumeona wasichana wengi ama akina mama kwa wavulana wakipoteza maisha kwa sababu ya vita ya jinsia. Nataka niseme kama wakili, kuna kesi ambayo imeamuliwa juzi tu ambayo inahusikana pia inafungamana na swala hili, ambapo msichana mmoja alikuwa anaitwa Monica Kimani aliuawa kwa njia isiyoeleweka na mahakama ishatoa hukumu. Inamaanisha kuwa kuna sheria za kutosha za kupambana na janga hili. Na jambo la kushtua katika taifa letu la Kenya ni mara mingi taasisi ama madola ya usalama katika nchi yetu ya Kenya mara kwa mara wazingatii vita vya kijinsia kama ni janga ambalo inaadhiri jamii yetu hapa nchini Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi kama wanaume, nataka niambie taifa letu la Kenya, wanaume wengi wanaheshimu akina mama na wanawake. Ni wachache tu ambao labda wako na hiyo unyama. Nakubaliana na wenzangu wamesema hivi vyumba vya raha na starehe ambazo inatumika kama zile tumejua hoteli za kawaida, mikahawa za kawaida, zifanyiwe zisajiliwe na kupitia wizara husika ya masuala ya ndani, tujue ni kina nani wanaingia kule, ni saa ngapi, na itakuwa rahisi sana kufuatilia yale mauaji ambayo umeona ya video ya wasichana ama akina mama. Nafikiri ikiwa tutafanya hivyo kama taifa, Mheshimiwa Spika, itakuwa tumejaribu kuzuia yale mauaji ambayo yanatokea kiolela. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo la pili ni kuwa kama taifa pia tuko na jukumu kubadilisha zile maadili na taasuba ambazo zimeendelea kukabili jamii zetu mbalimbali, kuwa ya kwamba wanawake kwa wanaume wako sawa kwa njia mbalimbali, kwa sababu Mungu anajua kwa nini wengine ni wa kike na wengine ni wa kiume. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nataka niwaulize wanaume wa Kenya ambao wako na tabia hiyo wakome. Wasipokoma, sheria itachukuliwa mara moja. Mheshimiwa Spika, hakuna haja ya kuinua ngumi ama kofi, kwa sababu wote ni binadamu na sisi wote ni watu ambao ni wazima. Mimi nataka niwaulize wanaume, mwanamke ni kumpiga na kanga. Na kumpiga na kanga, Mheshimiwa Spika, ama leso. Unajua mwanamke ni kumpiga tu na leso, si kumshambuliwa kwa makonde na mangumi na pia kumpenda kupitia pesa pia vile wenzangu wanasema. Mheshimiwa Spika, hiyo ndio mapenzi. Lakini mimi nataka niulize pia akina mama, hasa wasichana, wawache kukula nauli ya wanaume, kwa sababu mara kwa mara hiyo ndio changamoto, hasa kwa wale vijana ambao wanajaribu kujikimu kwa zile lugha za kimtaa. Mheshimiwa Spika, ikiwa utaruhusu ni nukuu, ni kukula fair. Mheshimiwa Spika, hiyo ndio imeleta changamoto, lakini hiyo isikuwe sababu ya kumuumiza msichana ama mvulana kwa njia vyovyote. Nataka niulize maseneta wenzangu, hii si jambo la kike peke yake. Kuna wavulana wengi wameumizwa roho. Kuna wavulana wengi wamejinyonga kwa sababu wamekatazwa mapenzi na wasichana ama akina mama. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, inatakana ya kujulikana ya kwamba hawa pia ni binadamu, wako na matumaini na malengo fulani. Mheshimiwa Spika, na ikiwa itakuwa ni heshima, nataka niwaulize akina mama na wasichana, kama umpendi kijana, kama ni mvulana ama ni mzee, umwambie mapema. Awaje kukununulia mkawa, awaje kukununulia vikao na vibanzi. Mheshimiwa Spika, awaje kukuburudisha, awache kukuchukua kwa nyumba za starehe. Mheshimiwa Spika, ikiwa tutakuwa na heshima kupitia jambo la mapenzi, Mheshimiwa Spika, nafikiri kama taifa litakuwa mbele. Ya mwisho Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu naona masaa yameyoma, ni kumuuliza Mheshimiwa Senator Crystal Asige alete jambo lolote ama kubadilisha bendekezo la kubadilisha sheria yote katika bunge hili. Sisi kama seneti tutasimama tubadilishe sheria kuchunga wote wavulana kwa wasichana, kwa sababu hiyo ni lengo. Na wakati tunaposherekea siku ya wapendanao, Mheshimiwa Spika, ingekuwa ni vizuri kukumbuka wale wa mama ambao wameumizwa, Mheshimiwa Spika, na vijana. Asante sana kwa kunipa fursa.
Senator Chergai, I must commend you for your Kiswahili ability from Nandi. Senator Beth Siango.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice on this motion by Senator Crystal Asige on femicide cases. Mr. Speaker, I didn't know that to love is a crime. Girls who love handsome boys, young men, they are killed just simply because of loving. Women who have left their fathers' families to marry men in this nation, they are killed for loving them. It is sad. That's why, if you have noticed, Mr. Speaker, today, all female legislators are in black because we are mourning. We are not celebrating this Valentine Day. Mr. Speaker, allow me to say, looking at this issue strictly, I would say, as a country, we have a problem. Family values have been left behind, and that's why we have problems. If only the country, the society would hold dear family values. If within the family values, people from home would learn how to relate with one another. They will get to know how to relate and relationships with one another, relating to themselves, and relating to one another. Family values will give people priority. Men will know what are their lines. And if only as a country we treasure and go back to practicing family values. Looking at this, I would say, Mr. Speaker, as a country, societal fabric is broken. And that's why there's so much evil within our society. The killings that we are experiencing are not normal. How would a person in his right mind dismember a woman that he had gotten into a hotel or into a room to make love with? It is sad. Mr. Speaker, I will also associate these cases, increase of cases of femicide, to hard economical times. Allow me to speak to our youth in this nation. If you are jobless, if you don't have money, you will not get money by killing. If you don't want to take responsibility, it will not pay you to kill a woman. Please stop killing. Try to work hard, and I would request the government at this point to make sure they don't just speak. It is not cosmetic promises, but let's have jobs for our young people so that they will feel men enough, they can entertain women, they can treat women, they can take responsibilities at home and in the society. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to speak to the women in this nation. It is good to be loved and to love. It is honorable to be married. But if a woman is in a marriage that is not working and violence has started existing in that marriage, please leave. It is better to live a life and go and live alone, struggle, and make life work than to stay in an abusive marriage that will lead to your death. Allow me to speak to young girls. Struggling and living life of poverty is not also a curse or a crime. Work hard, your time will come. Don't go for easy money, because it is good to be alive, to live and struggle and get your own money, get a job, than to rush into your death. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am not happy the way our men legislators have walked out when we are discussing such an important matter. How I wish every male legislator will look at a woman as their daughters, their sisters, their mothers. They may look down upon their wives anyway, but please, men, look at women as your daughters, your sisters, your mothers. Your wife may be a companion.
Senator Beth, I think your time is up. Senator Wafula Wakoli.
Mheshimiwa Spika, asante. Kwa nafasi hii, leo watu wanasherehekea mapenzi. Lakini inategemea ni mapenzi ya nini, Mheshimiwa Spika. Wale wanapenda pesa, mvinyo, chakula, mavazi. Yote ni mapenzi, Mheshimiwa Spika. Nataraji kwamba hicho ndicho kiini cha mjadala wa siku ya leo. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna wale wana mazoea ya kuvuna pasipo panda. Wale ambao tabasamu vilivyo tayari pasipo kushughulikia kuviandaa. Wale walio tayari kupakua na sio kutafuta kuni kuandaa. Mheshimiwa Spika, donda hili ndilo linalotusumbua sisi kama jamii. Mheshimiwa Spika, wale ambao wanamiliki maeneo ya starehe na kujivinjari, kwa sasa maeneo haya yanaitwa B&Bs na kadhalika, lazima tujue ni wapi ama ni sheria zipi zinadhibiti kuchipuka kwa maeneo haya ya burudani. Lazima vile vile, Mheshimiwa Spika, tujue, kwa sababu wengi ambao wamehusika katika mauaji, Mheshimiwa, ni watalii ama wageni kutoka nchi tofauti. Serikali lazima kupitia idara ya serikali ya ulinzi na masuala ya ndani kudhibiti wanaokuja ama kuzuru nchi hii, ili wasije wakaleta tabia ama hulka ambazo hazieleweki, na ili kwamba kwa kuweka wanawake wetu katika hali tatanishi. Rafiki yangu mmoja aliniambia ilile linalowakumba vijana wengi, wasichana kwa wavulana, na kuhisi kujikuna, lakini hawajui watajikuna vipi. Wanataraji kula, lakini hawajui watauma vipi. Lazima jamii na vile vile haswa viongozi wanawake nchi ya Kenya, iwapo tungekuwa tunajadili mambo ya tabia nzuri, mambo ya tamaduni nzuri, mambo ya kulinda na kukuza wasichana wetu katika njia nzuri kutoka Januari hadi Disemba, siku ya leo ya mapenzi hatungevaa nguo nyeusi. Kwa sababu baadhi ya wale ambao wanatajika nchi hii katika vyombo vya habari na katika maisha yao ni kinyume sana na familia zinazoheshimika, familia ya bwana na bibi wanaopendana. Wao hutamka tofauti. Lakini leo, Mheshimiwa Spika, wanadai kwamba watu waheshimiwe. Heshima ya umenke ama jinsia hudhibitishwa ama hukuzwa kutoka nyumbani. Sasa mimi naomba viongozi, maseneta, wabunge, mawaziri waanze kukuza na kufunza wasichana wetu kwamba hakuna cha bure duniani. Zile hoteli nzuri ambazo wanaingia wakitabasamu wakaangalia paa, watu wametolea jasho. Vile vyakula vinavyoandaliwa wakila wakiwacha, watu wametolea jasho. Lazima wajiulize, kile unachopata bure anayekupa na tafuta nini? Sia yule anayetabasamu anakutazama anakupenda kwa haki. Ni kama fisi ama simba anamuona mwana kondoo. Kondoo anadhani simba na manyoya amefurahi. Hapana, simba anamuonea huruma tu. Lazima jamii ya Kenya tukae tujadili mambo haya kwa kina. Viongozi wa makanisa, kando na kuhubiri binguni, ufalme huko hapa, zungumza na wazee, zungumza na kina mama, zungumza na vijana, tuelewe kwamba lazima tuishi pamoja, tuelewane. Mapenzi ni ya roho safi kama jinsi Yesu alivyohubiri. Lakini isiwe ni siku moja kama ya leo, Mheshimiwa Spika, tunavaa meusi, nguo nyeusi, tunalalamika na tunafunga ukurasa. Kesho je? Tuweke mikakati, idara ya elimu, makanisa, serikali, wote tuje pamoja, kwa sababu hili ni jambo linatuathiri sisi wote, kutoka nyumbani kwetu hadi juu ya taifa. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika, na kashifu mauaji ya wanawake, na kashifu uporaji wa pesa za wanaume, na kashifu ulaji wa rasilimali ovyo ovyo. Cha muhimu tuishi pamoja, tupendane, nipe nikupe, patashika katika maisha. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Beatrice Akenya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity. And from the word go, I rise to condemn femicide. I rise to join my colleague, Senator Asige, in this honorable motion, and to also support the sentiments by my colleagues and the sentiments of Kenyans all over. Honorable Speaker, I want to begin by saying that femicide cannot be about women, and it cannot be a business of women, because the loss of life, the loss of the life of the women, it is a loss of life, it is a loss of a mother, it is a loss of a daughter, it is a loss of a sister, it could be a loss of a provider, it is a loss of a Kenyan, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, we need to get back to our societal networks. What is the society, how is the society guiding each other? We need to be our brother's keeper. We need to re-examine our education system. What kind of knowledge are we passing on to our learners? Are we getting knowledge to learners that is only geared towards some paper education? Are we focusing on knowledge that is taking us back to values that will protect our children? Are we teaching our children about certain values, about tolerance, about love, about respect for each other, about patience, about determination, about working hard, about hard work in order to enjoy the benefits that we desire? Honorable Speaker, it is unfortunate. In my village, while we were in recess, just in the next ward, I went to a burial, and it was such a pity that we are burying a young woman who had been strangled in the night, strangled by unknown people, leaving 3 young children with a man who was away, a husband who was away, also doing some menial jobs elsewhere. That is the face of femicide. And Honorable Speaker, just in December, everybody saw the news about a young woman who was from a market in Ndewa sub-county where I come from. And while she had brought food from the market and went to cook, somebody just came and chopped off her head with a panga. That is the face of femicide that we're talking about today. And we are saying the loss of women is the loss of providers and the loss of mothers. And so we condemn this. Honorable Speaker, I also want to tell the young ones, the youths, be they women or men, be they boys or girls, that hard times don't last, but hard people last forever. They must be able to go the hard way of providing for themselves. We must never encourage shortcuts for our people. Let us encourage the young people to work hard. Let us encourage them that that is what is sustainable. And if any case, Honorable Speaker, life was never meant to be easy. But Honorable Speaker, as I wind up, I condemn femicide and say there is no reason forever, for whatever reason, that why a woman should be killed. Whether it is for whichever reason, whether people talk about love, whether people talk about fair, whether people talk about anything, we must be able to say no to femicide. And so, Honorable Speaker, I support this motion.
Senator Okech Eddie.
Mr. Speaker, I've been listening through this entire debate. And Mr. Speaker, I am perturbed. I'm actually very sad because I listen to voices in this house who are senators of Kenya. And what is singing in my head, it appears like senators are joining societal perception that shift blames of these femicides on our young girls and on our women. Any thought that starts to shift blame in whichever form, whether it's the issue of fear, whether it's the issue of lack of understanding by our young daughters and women in this country, that shifts any blame in whichever way to victims of these brutal acts of femicide, Mr. Speaker, is extremely biased. Because we cannot join social media bloggers in trying to put our heads around this thought. We cannot join the media in trying to blame girls for whichever reasons that they made to like or to associate with some men in some ways, and then they found themselves in the extreme form of violence called femicide. It is indeed very sad to hear that from this house. And it's sad to the extent that if we are not careful, if this house can throw its hands in the air and say that it is about behavior, it is about legal assistance, it's about counseling to women, it is about safe nets for women and safe shelters for women, is extremely, extremely sad. Because we participate in normalizing criminal activities by men who constantly go through this gender-based violence to the extreme elements of actually killing women. We cannot allow that, Mr. Speaker. If you look at Chapter 4 of this Constitution, Mr. Speaker, Chapter 4 is fully dedicated on the Bill of Rights, Mr. Speaker. And the Bill of Rights in the new Constitution is one of the most adventurous and one of the most innovative chapters that defines the Constitution of 2010. If you read the entire Bills of Rights, Mr. Speaker, the rights and fundamental freedoms of women, just like any other person in this country, is purposed to be able to allow them recognize and protect their human dignity to the extent that they can be able to achieve their entire potential as human, Mr. Speaker. So, what this is indicating, Mr. Speaker, is that the government of Kenya, starting from Parliament, where I sit, has failed the women of this country. The government of Kenya has failed the women of this country. Mr. Speaker, if you read Article 22 of the Constitution on the Enforcement of Bill of Rights, Mr. Speaker, our courts have failed the women of this country. Our executive has failed the women of this country. The parliament has failed the women of this country. There is nowhere in the Constitution that you can limit the association of anybody within this border with anyone or with whichever groups. But if criminal activities happen, Mr. Speaker, whereby people are killing women, they must be treated as criminals and they must be dealt with as criminals, Mr. Speaker. People are talking about teaching our young girls and boys how to live when people from Nigeria come to the borders of this country, sneak in, kill our women, and live very comfortably with all the instruments and the power that the government has. We cannot be able to trace an individual who did this thing. Mr. Speaker, it's a shame. It's a shame. And as a government, we must decide to deal with the criminal activities as criminal activities. And this continued violence on women, in whichever form, whether it's just a mere GBV or to the extent of femicide, Mr. Speaker, must be a national crisis so that anytime these things happen, Mr. Speaker, I think that the government must take action. There is no education about legal assistance that we need to continue giving women, Mr. Speaker. There is no any effort on counseling that we need to continue telling women on how to associate with their male counterparts. It is a simple issue of dealing with criminals within our borders. I come from Migori County, Mr. Speaker, where I've seen gender-based violence dealt with as a matter of criminal activities. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I do support this motion, and I do appreciate my sister Asige for bringing it, Senator Asige for bringing this motion on the floor of the House. But most importantly, I want to urge lawmakers that let's deal with this issue as an issue of criminal activity that must be dealt with for one.
Senator Hezena Lemaletian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I join my colleagues to strongly oppose the rampant cases of femicides happening in Kenya against young women. Mr. Speaker, there's so much a man can do to a woman other than beat her or fight her. And as far as I know, women are the most nurturing creatures of creations of God. And Mr. Speaker, even when we look back at the creation story, biblically that is, God created the man and he was not satisfied. So he himself saw that there was an importance of the woman being part of his creation, and therefore he created the woman. And interestingly enough, the woman became the vessel by which God delivers more human beings to earth. And through the woman, we have the procreation and the posterity of the human race. That means, Mr. Speaker, when you eliminate a woman, you are threatening to wipe out the entire human race. And Mr. Speaker, I liken this to the case of the egg coming before the hen. Which one came before the other? I think that is the situation that is happening right now. And perhaps the men are a bit sour. Not all of them, most are a bit sour that they are still not in the Garden of Eden enjoying fruits alone. And Mr. Speaker, it is quite embarrassing to see Kenya trending globally for all the wrong reasons. Just the other day we were praising our country for giving a very powerful position for the first time, like the Chief Justice, to a woman. Mr. Speaker, I call upon the same courts to ensure that we have justice served to the families of these murdered young people. Mr. Speaker, I have personally heard of very derogatory remarks coming especially from people we consider honorable on these corridors of power. I have heard someone saying that this young girl, should have been impregnated by somebody right now, like human could not find somebody to impregnate this woman. To me, Mr. Speaker, this kind of sexist remarks culminate into these murders. And to me, these people who, or rather the men who label women in that sexist manner, are equivalent to these murderers. And Mr. Speaker, we say that the fish rots from the head. If we cannot lead by example as men and women elected to serve the rights of these people, then we are going to achieve nothing. Mr. Speaker, I was raised in a village by a very great man among warriors as a nomadic pastoralist girl. All I have known in my life is that men protect and provide. So men should try and walk away from the hypocrisy that we are seeing, leading from the top. And Mr. Speaker, we may be dealing with a crisis of men who are insecure and badly raised and do not know their role in the society. We have seen a lot of organizations doing women empowerment. What are our men in power doing to ensure that these young men are empowered? Or are we just doing men's conference? You know, men's conference ideally is supposed to take these men away from the women. What kind of things are we doing as men in this country? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, it is now 6:30 p.m. Time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 15th of February 2024 at 2:30 p.m.